Chapter 1464, Jian Wushuang's Plan. Chapter 1464, Jian Wushuang's Plan. One of the four kings in Sky Sword Prison, Blood Emperor, the top expert on the first level, his comprehension of Heaven Way had reached the first level of Doctrine Palace. Such a top expert wasn't someone Jian Wushuang could match evenly. He naturally stayed at a respectful distance. He had been wandering in Sky Sword Prison for 1,300 years, but he had never come across any one of the four kings. The reason why he would wander in Darkness Mountain was that he wanted to look for a few real gods at the second level to fight to train himself. But Jian Wushuang had never thought that Blood Emperor would invite him personally. What did he want? In Sky Sword Prison, it is very dangerous. People continuously kill in order to leave this place alive. Real gods like real god He Xiu were nice to me merely because they couldn't kill me. If any universe gods on the fourth or the third level who were weaker were to appear before real god He Xiu, he would have taken action directly to kill him. Blood Emperor has the ability to kill me. Hence, regardless of what his purpose is, it's impossible that I run to his Crimson Castle. It is no different from asking to die. Jian Wushuang muttered. He had already made up his mind. He didn't plan to bother Blood Emperor at all. He would stay as far away as he could. Unless he was confident with his power and thought he could deal with Blood Emperor frankly, he would then agree to see Blood Emperor. Jian Wushuang continued to wander. In the Crimson Castle that Blood Emperor was in. Master, real god He Xiu replied. He already passed your message to Jian Wushuang on your behalf. However, Jian Wushuang doesn't look like he intends to make a trip to Crimson Castle. The lady in green stood before Blood Emperor politely. Doesn't intend to make a trip. Blood Emperor raised his blade-like eyebrows. According to the replies of experts in Darkness Mountain, Jian Wushuang doesn't intend to visit Crimson Castle. He was still fighting with the experts in the region to train himself, the lady in green reported. The young man is quite smart. But, if he doesn't come to Crimson Castle, can I take the initiative to find him in person? Blood Emperor smiled coldly. Tell the people in Darkness Mountain to keep an eye on Jian Wushuang and send his current location to me. Yes, the lady in green replied. Then, Blood Emperor's body turned vague and left Crimson Castle. He then plunged towards where Jian Wushuang was. On a barren land. Rumble. A huge axe shadow appeared out of nowhere and pressed over mightily. Jian Wushuang was immediately tough against it with Crimson Light technique. In the end, he was forced to retreat by fierce strength. Ha, you live up to your name, real god Jiu Fu. You're really impressive. I learned my lesson today. Farewell. Jian Wushuang laughed and then turned to leave. Real god Jiu Fu didn't intend to stop Jian Wushuang too. He couldn't kill Jian Wushuang after all. In the void, Jian Wushuang plunged as he recalled the battle with real god Jiu Fu earlier. The expert standing at the second level was really strong. Although I created a real god unique skill and I am qualified to step foot on the second level, I belong to the bottom among all experts on the second level, Jian Wushuang muttered. However, with years of fighting experience, I have constantly improved in grasping flowing light phantom. It shouldn't be long until I reach the second stage. By then, I should be able to cast 9 shadows and my power will increase tremendously, especially in terms of speed. Until then, I should be able to start my hunting plan. Jian Wushuang stayed in Sky Sword Prison for 1,300 years. He had had his hunting plan long ago. After all, it was impossible for him to stay in Sky Sword Prison. He had to figure a way out. As he wanted to leave, he had to hunt down the experts. However, once he had revealed his power, especially his soul attack, he might cause a panic attack among experts in Sky Sword Prison. A consciousness attack was too creepy and hard to avoid. An expert who was good at consciousness attacks would be far scarier than other cultivators of another level. Most of the experts in Sky Sword Prison were of the third or the fourth level. Their defense power was extremely strong. However, their defense powers were mostly against physical attacks. Once they come across consciousness attacks, they would be the same as Universe God Long Xiu that Jian Wushuang killed before. Universe God Long Xiu survived under the king's attack, but he was killed by Jian Wushuang. How would other people compare? Hence, if the news about Jian Wushuang was that he was good at consciousness attacks and his consciousness attack was ferocious, and one without the consciousness strength of a real god couldn't resist if it were to spread, the universe gods in Sky Sword Prison would definitely keep their distance from Jian Wushuang. Everyone would keep a respectful distance and run away when they saw him. Who else would be willing to be a whetstone and fight against him? Plus, there might be some universe gods who joined forces to kill him, to remove him as a threat. Just like one of the 4 kings in Sky Sword Prison, Heartless King. She was a real god who was good at consciousness attacks and extremely strong. Back when she first got imprisoned in Sky Sword Prison, she killed many real gods and universe gods with consciousness attacks, but in the end, the experts of Sky Sword Prison noticed her existence and kept their distance. Whenever they noticed that she was nearby, they would run away. Hence, Heartless King could do nothing about it. Over the years, Heartless King was far from achieving the requirement to leave Sky Sword Prison. Heartless King was too powerful, too aloof. But I'm different. I am just a universe god and the experts in Sky Sword Prison wouldn't be bothered with me. Compared to Heartless King who was also good at consciousness attacks like me, I am at a major advantage because my consciousness has already transformed into soul power. Once my soul power is launched, I can easily find experts who are hiding and kill them. Heartless King wouldn't be able to do that, Jian Wushuang sneered. Hence, compared to Heartless King, his advantage over the experts on the 3rd and 4th level was much bigger. But because of that, Jian Wushuang never used his soul power since the beginning. He had been training his swordsmanship and close combat power to increase his overall power. Until he had absolute power to rely on, he would use soul power to conduct the massacres. It was an opportunity that Jian Wushuang tailored when he had entered Sky Sword Prison. Everything was going according to plan. Then, he was waiting for his mastery of Flowing Light Phantom to improve to the 2nd stage and cast 9 shadows. Then, he would begin the massacre. Chapter 1465, Blood Emperor is here. Chapter 1465, Blood Emperor is here. Jian Wushuang's plan was great. However, something unexpected always happens. Huh? Jian Wushuang suddenly stopped in the void and his face grew solemn. He could clearly feel the figure in a crimson robe with crimson hair within the coverage of his soul power. This look, and this aura. It's Blood Emperor. Jian Wushuang immediately realized the person's identity. In the void near Jian Wushuang, Blood Emperor had already noticed Jian Wushuang's existence too. Ha, found you. With a slight smile, Blood Emperor's figure plunged towards Jian Wushuang. Blood Emperor entrusted his people to pass me a message to invite me to his Crimson Castle, but I didn't go. Now, he has taken the initiative to look for me. Jian Wushuang's heart clenched. When he noticed Blood Emperor was plunging towards him, he didn't hesitate but started running away at his top speed. Jian Wushuang, I didn't say that I'm going to kill you. Why are you running away? In the void, Blood Emperor's voice spread as he stopped. Jian Wushuang then stopped running but he maintained a big distance from Blood Emperor. Although there are many experts in Sky Sword Prison, I reckon there shouldn't be many that wouldn't run away when they see Blood Emperor. I, Jian Wushuang, don't have the guts to deal with Blood Emperor in person, Jian Wushuang said and his voice spread from afar via divine power, into Blood Emperor's ears. I told the others to invite you over on my behalf but you never came to Crimson Castle as a guest. Naturally, I could only come to find you in person, Blood Emperor smiled faintly. I wonder what Blood Emperor would like me to do for him. Jian Wushuang asked. He was curious too. Why did Blood Emperor look for him? Actually, I looked for you because I needed your help, Blood Emperor said. I have been studying a formation for quite some time. However, the setup of the formation required a gemstone called Tian Sha gem. I don't have many of them, so I wanted to borrow a few from you. Tian Sha gem. Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows. What's a Tian Sha gem? Where did Blood Emperor hear that I have Tian Sha gems? You don't have Tian Sha gems? Blood Emperor frowned. I really don't, and I've never heard of Tian Sha gems, Jian Wushuang said straightforwardly. You've never even heard of them? Blood Emperor squinted his eyes as he thought to himself, he doesn't even know about the Tian Sha gems. In other words, it's impossible that he belongs to my tribe even though he carried a treasure of my tribe. Blood Emperor's gaze turned cold and he instantly lifted his head again. He smiled and said, Jian Wushuang, you should have Tian Sha gem, but you never knew. I have a Tian Sha gem with me, take a look. Blood Emperor took out a crimson gem from Qian Kun ring and pretended to show Jian Wushuang as his figure moved towards Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang, hurry up and run. King of Venomous Worms' voice suddenly heard in Jian Wushuang's head. Jian Wushuang's face grew grim and turned around immediately to run without hesitation. Just as he turned around, rumble, there was a soaring murderous intention which erupted from Blood Emperor. Blood Emperor was originally moving closer to him. But then, he was traveling at a terrifying speed too, like a crimson, flowing light that flew through the void towards Jian Wushuang. Blood Emperor said he didn't want to kill me. Jian Wushuang's facial expression changed. His soul power could sense that the distance between himself and Blood Emperor was getting smaller at a terrifying speed. At that rate, he reckoned that Blood Emperor would catch up to him in a short time. Secret skill of dragon blood. Jian Wushuang bellowed and the divine power in his body suddenly became a blazing inferno and churned at a terrifying speed. Burning with the aid of divine power, Jian Wushuang's speed instantly increased by a few hundred times. The distance between Blood Emperor and Jian Wushuang wasn't far, but it instantly widened the gap at extremely terrifying speed. What? Looking at the scene, Blood Emperor's face changed and he immediately sent a message to all the experts under his command within Darkness Mountain. He wanted them to stop Jian Wushuang from escaping. There were quite a number of experts under Blood Emperor's control and most of them had gathered at Darkness Mountain. The moment they received his order, they carried it out. However, Blood Emperor belittled Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang's soul power spread. Hence, whenever there were to be any experts that appeared around him, he could notice them at the very moment. Then, he would dodge. The experts in Darkness Mountain that wanted to stop him couldn't even see where he was. The chase only continued for 15 minutes and Blood Emperor had to stop. After all, Jian Wushuang was nowhere to be seen. The experts under his control also couldn't see Jian Wushuang anywhere. He escaped. Blood Emperor looked embarrassed and, at the same time, he was shocked. One must know that he was also good at speed. He took action personally, but Jian Wushuang had run away under his watch. Jian Wushuang's skill of escape was extraordinary. Blood Emperor stood in the void and waited for a while. He was waiting for the replies of the experts under his control. Very soon, he came to a conclusion. Although the young man was very fast at running away, he should have yet to get out of Darkness Mountain. If I'm not mistaken, he must have found a place to hide. The place that he is hiding is definitely within 1 billion miles range of this region before me. Blood Emperor was clear that it was impossible for Jian Wushuang to run out from Darkness Mountain in such short period of time. Plus, the experts under his control didn't notice Jian Wushuang's existence. Hence, Jian Wushuang had definitely hidden. There was a flash of a chilly gleam in Blood Emperor's eyes. The next moment, he gave a command to the experts under his control, everyone, gather at this region, search using consciousness within a 1 billion mile range. We must find Jian Wushuang. The experts under Blood Emperor's control immediately started to search within a 1 billion mile range. A 1 billion mile range was already extremely vast. One must know that there was a limitation of cultivators' consciousness coverage in Sky Sword Prison. A real god could only cover an expanse of 1,000 miles with his all. Relying on a real god's consciousness to search for a hidden expert within a billion-mile range was really difficult. Most importantly, within the 1 billion-mile range, the underground was not included. Taking the underground into account, the range became even wider. There was less than 100 of them if the experts under Blood Emperor's control were all added up. Even if everyone gathered to search through the 1 billion-mile range, the difficulty level of the search was still considered high. Chapter 1466, Living in Seclusion. Chapter 1466, Living in Seclusion. Within the 1 billion-mile range that the experts under Blood Emperor's control were searching through vigorously, in the extreme depths of the underground, there was a cave dwelling that had exploded forcefully by divine power. Jian Wushuang was in the cave dwelling. At that very moment, his face was pale and the aura on his body was weak. King of venomous worms, how long until my divine power has recovered to its peak? Jian Wushuang asked. The stronger your power, the more difficult it is to recover your divine power. Plus, your divine power wasn't expended in an ordinary massacre but burned by force while you were running away. When you arrived at this cave dwelling, your divine power was almost empty. Luckily, I was there to recover on behalf. You'll need at least 3 days to recover to your peak, King of Venomous Worms replied. With his divine power, which could be compared favorably with peak in the third heaven, under the situation where it was burned entirely, it was already considered an unbelievable recovery rate for him to recover in just 3 days. It was all because of King of Venomous Worms. If Jian Wushuang were to rely on his own recovery power, it would definitely require much longer time. 3 days? Jian Wushuang nodded in silence as his face grew grave. What's going on with Blood Emperor? I told him I have no Tiansha gem. I said I have none and he wanted to kill me. Could it be that he was definite that I have a Tiansha gem? But I don't even know what Tiansha gems are. Jian Wushuang muttered. It was because you didn't know about Tiansha gems. That's why Blood Emperor wanted to kill you, King of Venomous Worms said. Why? Jian Wushuang was confused. Jian Wushuang, if I'm not mistaken, Blood Emperor should be someone from Holocaust sect. King of Venomous Worms said. Holocaust sect? Jian Wushuang was shocked. Holocaust sect was one of the most vicious sects in Eternal Chaotic World. They were brutal and merciless. In order to enhance their power, they would even massacre countless living things. Such a sect was hated by every force in Eternal Chaotic World. They were the public enemy of all cultivators. Back in Green Fire World, Jian Wushuang came across an expert from Holocaust sect, Dao Yuanzi, and he witnessed the vicious measure of one from Holocaust sect. In the end, Dao Yuanzi died in his hand and his blood-killing plate armor was from Dao Yuanzi. An expert from Holocaust sect wants to kill me? Would it be because of blood-killing plate armor? Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows. Should be, King of Venomous Worms nodded. Blood-killing plate armor is a treasure made by Holocaust sect with a vicious method and experts from Holocaust sect should have some sensory ability towards treasure like this. Plus, the closer the distance, the stronger the senses. Previously, when you were wandering around the other places in Sky Sword Prison, Blood Emperor couldn't sense the existence of blood-killing plate armor as the distance was far. But when you came to Darkness Mountains, the distance became closer and he could sense the aura of blood-killing plate armor. Hence, he aimed for you. However, although he could sense the existence of blood-killing plate armor, he wouldn't be able to gauge if you were from Holocaust sect. After all, people from Holocaust sect must be extremely careful when they wander around Eternal Chaotic World. They would hide the aura of the secret skill of Holocaust sect that they cultivated entirely. Under a situation where they do not expose the aura actively, no one would know that he was an expert from Holocaust sect. Hence, he was nice to you at the very beginning. King of Venomous Worms paused and continued. As for the reason why he asked for a Tiansha gem from you, he was probing you. Tiansha gem was a treasure that Holocaust sect refined forcibly using a unique method. It is extremely precious. Many experts in Eternal Chaotic World never heard of it. However, an expert from the Holocaust sect would definitely know about it. He used Tian Sha Gam to test you, but you don't know anything about it. Hence, he determined that you aren't from Holocaust sect. You obtained blood-killing plate armor by chance. Hence, he wanted to kill you and take away your blood-killing plate armor. Oh, I see, Jian Wushuang nodded in silence, but he found it confusing. Although my blood-killing plate armor is quite powerful, it is just a chaos unique treasure for universe god level. It has yet to reach the real god level. With Blood Emperor's power, he shouldn't be bothered by this kind of treasure. Hee, you got this wrong, King of Venomous Worms scoffed. Blood-killing plate armor is really just a chaos unique treasure for universe god level to you. However, it was different for experts from Holocaust sect. After all, blood-killing plate armor was a unique treasure to Holocaust sect, and ordinary experts in Holocaust sect aren't qualified to have it. Dao Yuanzi, the guy you killed back then, wasn't as powerful as Blood Emperor, but his background should be more impressive compared to Blood Emperor. He didn't get blood-killing plate armor, but Dao Yuanzi got it. To Blood Emperor, he couldn't use blood-killing plate armor of universe god level. But when he's out of here, he could figure out a way to enhance the level of blood-killing plate armor through massacres. Then, blood-killing plate armor would become blood-killing king armor. Blood-killing king armor is a treasure that many experts from Holocaust sect dream of. Blood-killing king armor. Jian Wushuang was dumbfounded. He knew that there was blood-killing armor below blood-killing plate armor, but he didn't know about blood-killing king armor. No wonder Blood Emperor wanted to kill me. He wanted to take my blood-killing plate armor, Jian Wushuang understood. Blood Emperor is from Holocaust sect. If so, what if I expose his identity? Wouldn't he become the public enemy of cultivators in Sky Sword Prison? Jian Wushuang asked. He wouldn't. King of Venomous Worms smiled. If you were to expose his identity in the outside world, he would become a public enemy and be chased after by many experts. However, you're in Sky Sword Prison. In this prison, everyone is a prisoner. Under such conditions, every expert in Sky Sword Prison only wants to survive and shake off their identity as a prisoner one day. As for Blood Emperor being from Holocaust sect, they wouldn't be bothered. True, Jian Wushuang nodded as he agreed with King of Venomous Worms' assumption. Jian Wushuang, I'll pass on a set of hiding methods to you. Study them and master them as soon as possible, King of Venomous Worms suddenly said. Hiding methods? Jian Wushuang stunned. King of Venomous Worms explained, you're eyed by Blood Emperor and you're in big trouble. Although you're out of his sights for now, he definitely knew that you were hiding in this region. He definitely ordered the experts under his control to search for you in this region. If they find you, you'll be doomed. But if you master this method, it won't be that easy for them to find you. You might as well hide here and cultivate. Live in seclusion. Let Blood Emperor and his people continue their search. After some time, when they grow tired of it, you can find an opportunity to leave. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows when he heard that, and he understood. Chapter 1467, Heartless. Chapter 1467, Heartless. The experts under the control of Blood Emperor were searching for his whereabouts madly, and Jian Wushuang naturally could only opt to live in seclusion. Back when I was wandering around with King Luo Zhen, I learnt many methods. The hiding method that I'm going to teach you, although it isn't considered too high of a level in Eternal Chaotic World, should be sufficient for you, King of Venomous Worms said. After learning this method, even real God who probes using consciousness in the region wouldn't be able to feel your existence, let alone those ordinary real gods who briefly cover the range with simple consciousnesses. Jian Wushuang nodded and immediately started to cultivate the hiding method that King of Venomous Worms had provided him with. The level of the method wasn't high. Jian Wushuang would be able to master it very soon with his capability. Relying on the method, Jian Wushuang hid his aura entirely. Soon, Jian Wushuang realized that there was consciousness that swept past him. Someone's here and it should be a real god, Jian Wushuang said softly, there an aura in the coverage of his soul power. He was obviously a real god. However, the real god left straight away. As expected, even a real god can't find me, Jian Wushuang smiled and he felt at ease. Then, he took out the painting of understanding sword via reincarnation and started comprehending it and cultivating it in seclusion. The time flew past. In the outside world, the experts under the control of Blood Emperor, including Blood Emperor himself, continued to search through a 1 billion mile range. They even searched deep down in the ground, not letting any corner go unsearched. In a total of a dozen years, the experts almost searched the 1 billion mile range thoroughly. But they didn't find Jian Wushuang at all. Can't find him. Did he get out of this place? In the sky high above, Blood Emperor's face grew awkward but he quickly shook his head. No, it is impossible for him to escape in such short period of time. He is definitely still within the 1 billion mile range but he definitely cultivated some sort of method that concealed his aura. Hence, we can't find him. We are in trouble then. Blood Emperor was confident that Jian Wushuang was hidden in the 1 billion miles range and concealing his aura. If he couldn't even find him with consciousness probing, it would be almost hopeless for him to find Jian Wushuang. Unless Jian Wushuang revealed himself. As long as Jian Wushuang isn't stupid, he will definitely continue to live in seclusion. Until he reappears, the experts who are under my control won't stay guard in the 1 billion mile range to monitor his whereabouts for me, Blood Emperor muttered to himself as he tried to figure out a plan. Then, there's only one way to find the young man. There was a glimpse of light in Blood Emperor's eyes. Then, he took out a communication token. 2 years later, when Jian Wushuang was within the 1 billion mile range, Blood Emperor stood with his hands behind him on the peak of a tall mountain. He looked like he was waiting for something. Soon, in the void before him, a figure in white robe appeared gradually. It was a lady in white robe. The lady looked elegant and poised. She was smiling faintly and her body was enrobed with a warm aura. She gave people a holy and pure feeling. Blood Emperor, long time no see. The holy lady in the white robe walked slowly and appeared before Blood Emperor. She looked at Blood Emperor calmly. Blood Emperor was one of the 4 kings in Sky Sword Prison. All experts in Sky Sword Prison would revere Blood Emperor when they see him. However, the holy lady was rather calm before Blood Emperor. She didn't seem nervous or afraid but greeted him as though she were seeing an old friend. Heartless, Blood Emperor replied with a faint smile. He didn't behave haughtily with her either. Heartless. Heartless king. One of the 4 kings in Sky Sword Prison, another expert that was alongside Blood Emperor. Also, the only real god in Sky Sword Prison who was good at consciousness attacks. I heard that Fiery King went to Mist Kings. Then, he should be at your next. You invited me over today, is it to fight against Fiery King? The Holy Lady, Heartless King, asked. Fiery King. That mad man. Blood Emperor's face grew grave. Fiery King was like Heartless King and himself, he was also one of the 4 kings in Sky Sword Prison. Theoretically, Fiery King was not on the same level as him. In actual fact, the other 3 kings in Sky Sword Prison were afraid of him. Plus, Fiery King would leave his territory every once in a while to challenge the other 3 kings. As he already looked for Mist King, his next target would be Blood Emperor. Humph, the madman can come as he wishes. It has been more than once or twice anyway, Blood Emperor sneered, then looked at Heartless King. I invited you over today not because of Fiery King but because of another matter. Oh. Tell me, Heartless King sounded gentle. Heartless, I shall not beat around the bush with you. 1,000 years ago, there was a newcomer in Sky Sword Prison named Jian Wushuang, Blood Emperor said. Jian Wushuang and I shared a great resentment. I have to kill him. You have great resentment with a newcomer? What kind of resentment? Heartless King asked. It's something from outside of the prison. It's inconvenient for me to tell you. Regardless, I have to kill Jian Wushuang. Blood Emperor was speaking in a deep voice. Previously, I realized the resentment between him and me. I wanted to kill him on the spot. However, the young man's defense power was rather strong. He made a narrow escape. Oh. Heartless King raised her eyebrows and said, to be able to run away from you, Blood Emperor, just how capable is this Jian Wushuang? The young man is really capable, but while he could run away from me, he will never run out of Darkness Mountain. I am definite that he is still hiding somewhere under my nose. Over the past few years, I commanded the experts under my control to search through the area, to probe every inch with consciousness. However, they still can't find him. I reckon he must have cultivated an impressive hiding method that can conceal his aura from an ordinary real god's consciousness probing. Hence, I looked for you. Blood Emperor explained. You want me to look for Jian Wushuang for you? Heartless King's pupil contracted. Yes, Blood Emperor nodded. Among all real gods in Sky Sword Prison, you're definitely on the top of the list in terms of consciousness. The ordinary real gods under my control couldn't find Jian Wushuang's existence, but you could definitely find him if you're willing to help with your attainment in consciousness. Chapter 1468, Expose. Chapter 1468, Expose. Blood Emperor knew clearly just how scared Heartless King was in terms of consciousness. Her consciousness, including her manipulation method of consciousness, wasn't something any ordinary real god could be compared to. That was also the reason he invited Heartless King over. Can you definitely find him? Hee, Blood Emperor, you made it sound so easy. Heartless King shook her head and smiled, a range of 1 billion miles. If I were only to sweep the range with consciousness, it'd be easy. However, Jian Wushuang is obviously good at hiding, so I have to rely on consciousness to probe inch by inch, and you also know that the coverage of consciousness is restrained in Sky Sword Prison. Even if it was me, I'd need more than half a month to probe inch by inch over 100,000-mile range. Now, you're asking about 1 billion miles. How long will it take? Sweeping the range with consciousness and probing inch by inch were totally different. If one were only sweeping the range with consciousness, it'd be easy. If a real god wasn't restrained, their consciousness could easily sweep 100,000 miles. A range of 1 billion miles could be swept in a short time. However, probing inch by inch would require using consciousness to probe every corner within the search range. It would be much more difficult than sweeping the range with consciousness. Naturally, the time required would be much longer. The reason Jian Wushuang said that Heartless King's ability to search for experts was weaker than his was because Jian Wushuang lit up his soul power. He spread his soul power and he could cover each corner of the entire area. Anyone within the range of his soul power would reveal themselves. Although Heartless King's consciousness was strong, she couldn't do that. If some experts were to hide themselves, she had to spend a long time and great effort on probing inch by inch to find them. That was the reason why Heartless King couldn't fulfill the conditions to reach Sky Sword Prison after so many years. In the 1 billion mile range, probing inch by inch was actually very difficult for Heartless King. Blood Emperor, I'm afraid I won't be able to help, Heartless King said coldly. Blood Emperor creased his eyebrows slightly, then said, 2 evil soul pearls, how about that? Evil soul pearls? The Heartless King was surprised, but she immediately turned to look at Blood Emperor. Blood Emperor, you are really people from that force, huh? Regardless of where I'm from, we are now prisoners in Sky Sword Prison. Aren't we? Blood Emperor said. True, Heartless King nodded and smiled. 3 evil soul perks and I'll find Jian Wushuang for you. 3. Blood Emperor found it a pain. Evil Soul Pearl was Holocaust sect's exclusive treasure. It required extremely great effort and a high price to pay in order to refine one. Evil Soul Pearl was a great help for consciousness. Although Blood Emperor was an expert in Holocaust sect, he didn't have many Evil Soul Pearls. But then, he had to take out 3 pearls at once. Although Evil Soul Pearl is precious, it is nothing compared to blood-killing plate armor. Blood Emperor squinted his eyes and then nodded. 3 evil soul pearl, deal. Then, Blood Emperor passed a Qian Kun ring to Heartless King. There's 1 evil soul pearl here. The other 2 I'll give you after I kill Jian Wushuang. Sure, Heartless King smiled faintly and examined it. Virum. There was a boundless consciousness that spread out from Heartless King and covered every single corner within range. Heartless King had already started probing for Blood Emperor within a 1 billion mile range. However, even for Heartless King, it wasn't easy to find Jian Wushuang within the 1 billion mile range. Even if she didn't rest, it would require a long time. In the blink of an eye, it had been 70 years. In the void, Heartless King was still probing inch by inch with consciousness while Blood Emperor followed next to Heartless King. In this 100,000 mile range, he isn't here. Let's head to the next area, Heartless King said. Then, Heartless King and Blood Emperor immediately came to the next void. For 70 years, we already searched through half of the 1 billion mile range. If Jian Wushuang were to really be within the 1 billion miles range, we will be able to find him very soon. Heartless King said and then spread her consciousness again. At that very moment, in the underground below Heartless King and Blood Emperor, in the depth of the cave dwelling, Jian Wushuang was seated quietly as he comprehended the painting of Understanding Sword via reincarnation. After so many years, I've comprehended the second painting thoroughly. Next up, the third painting, Jian Wushuang smiled. There was a total of 9 images in the painting of Understanding Sword via reincarnation. Based on Jian Wushuang's comprehension of reincarnation doctrine, he could only comprehend the first 3. He had already comprehended the first 2 among the 3. Jian Wushuang reckoned that if he were to comprehend the third one as well, his comprehension of reincarnation doctrine would be qualified to pass the first level of Doctrine Palace. By then, he didn't have to be afraid of Blood Emperor either. The third is obviously more profound compared to the 2 previous ones, Jian Wushuang thought to himself. But suddenly, there was a boundless consciousness spreading across. Naturally, Jian Wushuang's cave dwelling was within range too. There's experts here to disturb me with consciousness again. It seems like Blood Emperor has yet to give up. Jian Wushuang smoked as he spread his soul power. He wanted to see which experts released consciousness. Just as he looked clearly with his soul power, Jian Wushuang's face grew grave. It's Blood Emperor. And the other person? The person was in a white robe, looking extremely holy. On top of that, her consciousness was extremely shocking. Jian Wushuang immediately recognized the person. It's Heartless King. Blood Emperor invited Heartless King over. Jian Wushuang's face grew grave. The hiding method that King of Venomous Worms passed down to him had no problem if he were to use it to deal with an ordinary real god. Even if the real gods swept their consciousness across him, they would never notice his existence. However, it was Heartless King who came. She was a real god who was good at consciousness attacks. Among real gods in Sky Sword Prison, she was the strongest in terms of consciousness strength. Jian Wushuang wasn't confident in himself that his hiding method was still sufficient before Heartless King. I hope she doesn't notice me. Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows tightly, trying his best to conceal his aura to his maximum. However, he also considered the worst situation and made plans for it. Heartless King was probing inch by inch with her consciousness. Very soon, she found Jian Wushuang in the cave dwelling. Heartless King moved and locked her fierce consciousness power on Jian Wushuang. Found him, Heartless King revealed a smile. However, in the cave dwelling in the depths of the underground, Jian Wushuang's face instantly changed. She found me. Hurry up and run. Without hesitation, Jian Wushuang, who made a plan for the worst conditions, instantly started running away. Chapter 1469, Consciousness Prison. Chapter 1469, Consciousness Prison. Can I escape? Heartless King smirked coldly in the sky high above as she spread a boundless consciousness. The entire universe grew dark. Swoosh! Jian Wushuang plunged out of the underground and looked at a black wall blockage formed entirely with consciousness that had appeared before him. His face grew grave. Break! Wow! There was a sharp glimpse of sword light. Jian Wushuang erupted his divine power to his limit and performed the real god unique skill that he had invented, Crimson Light. Although the sword light made a huge crack on the black wall blockage, it didn't slash the black wall blockage apart. The crack immediately recovered too. What? Jian Wushuang looked to be in a fix. Swoosh! Swoosh! The two figures suddenly appeared in the black space. They were Heartless King and Blood Emperor. Blood Emperor, according to our deal, I found Jian Wushuang for you and locked him up in this consciousness prison. As for if you can kill him, it depends on yourself, Heartless King smiled faintly. This is the remaining 2 evil soul pearls. Blood Emperor threw a Qian Kun ring to Heartless King as he moved towards Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang, you made it so troublesome for me to find you. Blood Emperor looked at Jian Wushuang coldly and his eyes filled with a surging murderous intention. We are in big trouble. Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows tightly as he looked around. This should be one of the measures that made Heartless King famous, consciousness prison. It is said that in the consciousness prison, even a real god on the top of the 2nd level can barely escape. However, just because real god on the top of the 2nd level couldn't escape, doesn't mean that I can't. Jian Wushuang thought to himself quietly. He swept out his soul power wantonly and covered the consciousness prison surrounding him. The consciousness prison is really sturdy, but there's weak point. The weak point is there. Jian Wushuang locked towards the direction. He could feel that the consciousness wall blockage from that direction was obviously much weaker than the others. With my ability, if I were to perform all my techniques, maybe I could explode the weak point. Then, I'd have a chance to escape. Jian Wushuang thought and already made up his mind. Blood Emperor had already taken action. There was a flash of murderous intention in his eyes. Rumble. A fierce aura soared and his body immediately grew 3 meters high and was covered in crimson red, as though he were a living blood person. Jian Wushuang, die. A loud shrill and the statue of the 3-meter-tall blood person suddenly appeared before Jian Wushuang. Wow! Blood Emperor only briefly lifted his hand and immediately, there was a blade shadow that crystallized in the void, covered in crimson light. The blade shadows that overlapped one another contained boundless power. Suddenly, they slashed at Jian Wushuang with anger. Hong! It was as though the entire universe was slashed in half. Such strong power. Jian Wushuang was frightened and his soul power instantly flowed out. Roar! A deafening roar was suddenly heard and there was golden light that erupted from Jian Wushuang's body and formed a huge golden divine ape. The divine ape was wielding a sword as it swept out fiercely with a boundless, unyielding manner. Oh! Heartless King, who had already moved to the border of consciousness prison, couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Jian Wushuang is also good at consciousness attacks. He seems to be quite good at it too. Bang! There was a loud thud and the entire universe shook madly. However, the consciousness prison was still as sturdy as a rock. The huge divine ape became a golden, flowing light and flew out. It landed on the consciousness wall blockage behind and shook from the hit. Then, the golden divine ape took another huge stride forward. After taking a hit of mine, not only did you not die, but your aura didn't even weaken. Jian Wushuang, your power is not too shabby. The blood person that Blood Emperor had transformed into fixed its gaze on Jian Wushuang with its bloodshot eyes. Hee, if Blood Emperor were to let out your fighting power of a true real god, it would be easy peasy to kill me. However, it won't be that easy now. Jian Wushuang sounded extremely arrogant. Although he was only a universe god, his divine body could be compared favorably with a real god's. On top of that, with blood-killing plate armor, even though Blood Emperor's abilities were much stronger than his, it wouldn't be that easy to really kill him. I'd like to see just how long you can endure for. Blood Emperor launched another attack, but he intended to fight Jian Wushuang in close combat. Wow! 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 Blood Emperor was like a crimson ghost that constantly appeared around Jian Wushuang. A fierce, ferocious hit was launched one after another at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang cast 3 shadows simultaneously and gave full play to flowing light phantom technique. At the same time, he erupted the close combat power that he had trained for the past 1,000 years in Sky Sword Prison entirely. Bang! 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 Every ferocious hit and collision made a vigorous roar. After 1,300 years of training, Jian Wushuang's close combat skill was definitely much stronger than before. However, compared to Blood Emperor, who became an overlord in Sky Sword Prison long ago, he was still a notch lower. Most importantly, Blood Emperor's comprehension of Heaven Way was sufficient to pass through the first level of Doctrine Palace. In terms of unique skill, he was also much stronger than Jian Wushuang. That also led to the one-sided situation in the battle. Jian Wushuang was suppressed by Blood Emperor entirely. Luckily, his defense power was extremely strong. After he took a few hits from Blood Emperor, although he was wounded, it wasn't to the state where he would die. Humph, if you were to be outside Sky Sword Prison, you'd be dead long ago. Blood Emperor's gaze grew cold and continuously damaged Jian Wushuang. Although Jian Wushuang tried his best to fight back, his condition went from bad to worse due to the difference in their power. During the vigorous fight, Jian Wushuang intentionally moved towards the weakest point of the consciousness prison. Soon, very soon. There was hope in Jian Wushuang's eyes. He knew clearly that he was merely fighting a losing battle desperately, like a cornered wild beast, as he continued to fight against Blood Emperor. His real intention was there, but his goal was to aim at the weakest point of consciousness prison. Just as Jian Wushuang and Blood Emperor were fighting against each other in the consciousness prison, in a place near to consciousness prison. Swoosh! A figure that was showered in flames appeared in the void. He had just appeared and he could sense the boundless consciousness power nearby. Why would heartless consciousness prison be here? The brawny man with fiery red hair creased his eyebrows and instantly plunged in the direction of the consciousness prison was at. Very quickly, he arrived before the consciousness prison. Then, he overlooked the huge consciousness prison before him. Chapter 1470, This Technique. Chapter 1470, This Technique. Heartless, and Blood Emperor. The brawny man engulfed in flames smiled. Even with the hindrance of consciousness prison, the brawny man could still see the happening within clearly. He naturally also saw the scene of Blood Emperor fighting against Jian Wushuang. This universe god should be Jian Wushuang, who came to Sky Sword Prison not too long ago. To be able to struggle for so long in Blood Emperor's hand, his power is not too shabby. However, it ends here, the brawny man smiled faintly as he watched. He couldn't be bothered, nor did he plan, to get involved. In consciousness prison. Very soon. I'll be there very soon. Jian Wushuang's eyes were red with a tinge of madness. However, in actual fact, he was absolutely calm and cool-headed. He had been moving towards the weakest point of the consciousness prison the whole time. He finally arrived at the weakest point of the consciousness prison, but his divine body was heavily injured. This is it. There was a glimpse of light in Jian Wushuang's eyes. Hong! A vast, blazing quicksand exploded directly. The blazing quicksand region moved towards Blood Emperor under Jian Wushuang's manipulation. Although it seemed to only have constrained Blood Emperor slightly, it at least affected his speed. At the same time, there was an enormous amount of crimson flame that flowed from Jian Wushuang's body. The crimson flame formed a huge, crimson sea of fire directly. Jian Wushuang was standing right at the core of the sea of fire, as though he were the king of the crimson sea. The power of Star Palace in his body instantly flowed out too. The secret skills of Scarlet Kingdom and Star Palace were performed simultaneously. Break. Jian Wushuang's expression looked extremely crazy as the golden divine ape that covered the surface of his body let out a roar. The sword in its hand was revealing boundless power as well. Wow! A terrifying sword light swept out. The sword light wasn't a slash against Blood Emperor, but at the consciousness wall behind Jian Wushuang. It was a single venture that Jian Wushuang risked everything on, and he performed a variety of his trump cards at once. If the hit were to collapse the consciousness wall, he would stand a chance to escape. Hong! A vigorous noise and the originally sturdy consciousness prison suddenly shook madly and teetered from the attack. In the very next moment, on the consciousness wall that Jian Wushuang hit, a crack appeared and had an opening. Although the opening wasn't too big, it was big enough for Jian Wushuang to run out of. What? He knew the weakest point of my consciousness prison. Heartless King, who had retreated to the border of the consciousness prison, was surprised. Compared to Jian Wushuang being able to cause an opening in consciousness prison, she was even more shocked by the earlier technique that Jian Wushuang had suddenly performed. Especially that one technique. This technique? Heartless King was shocked. Even Blood Emperor was stunned on the spot. Blood Emperor, you never said that Jian Wushuang knew this technique before. Heartless King straightaway roared. I never knew he knew that technique too. Blood Emperor bellowed, but he looked extremely distressed. At this point, we can't think too much. Kill. Swoosh. Blood Emperor was fueled by murderous intention. He locked his gaze on Jian Wushuang and plunged to chase after him. However, Jian Wushuang, who caused an opening in consciousness prison, already appeared outside of consciousness prison after he had exited from the opening. I'm out. There was joy shimmering in Jian Wushuang's eyes. Without the hindrance of consciousness prison, it would be much easier if he wanted to escape in the open space. Jian Wushuang instantly performed the secret skill of dragon blood and the divine power in his body started burning in madness. At the same time, he swept out his soul power. Just as Jian Wushuang performed the secret skill of dragon blood and was prepared to make a run. What? Jian Wushuang's face suddenly changed. Within his sensory range of soul power, he noticed an extremely hot aura which was traveling at terrifying speed. The aura appeared in the void right before him. This is... Jian Wushuang lifted his head and saw a cloud of boundless flame sweeping over. The flame was like a cloud of fire that descended from heaven. The cloud of fire landed before Jian Wushuang. Rumble. The boundless flame swept forward crazily in an imposing manner, like breaking dead wood. The surrounding 10,000-mile range was burned by the blazing flame to the point where not even a blade of grass would grow. The terrifying power frightened Jian Wushuang, while Blood Emperor and Heartless King, who were chasing after Jian Wushuang, immediately hauled their steps. The boundless flame slowed down and finally left a small flame burning. Inside the small flame, a brawny figure gradually revealed itself. He had fiery red hair, fiery red eyebrows, and even his beard had a flame-like redness. His body was built and his skin was tan. He was filled with an air of masculinity. However, the brawny man engulfed in the flame was covered in unprecedented rage and his gaze was furious too. Looking at the visitor, Blood Emperor and Heartless King grew grave. Jian Wushuang stopped in the void afar too. He was shocked to see the sight. Such a terrifying aura. The aura was so savage and so much stronger compared to Blood Emperor and Heartless King. This is Fiery King. Jian Wushuang immediately understood the visitor's identity. In Sky Sword Prison, the four kings were publicly recognized as the four most powerful experts. However, among the four experts, there were differences in their power too. Among them, Fiery King was known publicly and recognized as the strongest. He was stronger than Blood Emperor, Heartless King and also Mist King. The legend said that Fiery King would visit the other three kings every once in a while to fight against them. Every time they fought, although he couldn't kill the other three kings, he could torture the other three kings. Hence the reason why he was recognized as the #1 overlord in Sky Sword Prison. The other three kings were afraid of Fiery King to a certain extent. Then, Fiery King appeared before Jian Wushuang. Impressive. 4 kings in Sky Sword Prison, and there are 3 here. Plus, Fiery King took the initiative to block Blood Emperor and Heartless King for me? Jian Wushuang's expression grew strange. The brawny man showering in flame, Fiery King, was in boundless anger as he stared at Blood Emperor and Heartless King before him. Blood Emperor, Heartless, the two of you, how dare you do anything to my underling? You have guts. A loud roar was heard from Fiery King. His deafening voice shook the surrounding void as though they were shivering in fear. Hearing that, Blood Emperor and Heartless King grew pale while Jian Wushuang looked surprised. Chapter 1471, Fiery King. Chapter 1471, Fiery King. My man. Fiery King said that I'm his man. Jian Wushuang was caught by surprise. He had not been in Sky Sword Prison for long. He had not came across Fiery King before, nor had he been an appendage to Fiery King. But then, Fiery King said that he was his man. More interestingly, from Blood Emperor and Heartless King's expressions, they seemed to know that he was Fiery King's man. What was going on? Fiery King. Heartless King looked at Fiery King. I am invited by Blood Emperor. He gave me benefits while I only looked for Jian Wushuang on his behalf. Before this, I never knew that he was your man. I had no idea either, Blood Emperor said. I don't care if you knew or not. In short, you already took action against him. Fiery King was raging with anger. He was really angry at that moment. When he came to the void nearby and saw Blood Emperor and Heartless King were fighting against Jian Wushuang, he didn't bother, nor did he intend, to get involved. After all, a massacre in Sky Sword Prison was originally crazy. Jian Wushuang wasn't related to him at all, so his death had nothing to do with him. However, at the crucial moment, Jian Wushuang performed various trump cards and caused an opening in the consciousness prison. Among the trump cards that Jian Wushuang performed, it included the technique from Scarlet Kingdom. The moment he saw Jian Wushuang perform the secret skill of Scarlet Kingdom, Fiery King couldn't just sit and watch. As you already took action against my man, you have to pay the price for what you have done. A cold voice was heard from Fiery King's mouth. The next moment, Fiery King immediately launched an attack. Rumble. Fiery King's figure expanded instantly and suddenly became a giant that was 100 zhang tall and covered in flame. It was a flaming giant. Wow! The flaming giant stepped hard and kicked in the direction of Blood Emperor and Heartless King. On the way, a churning crimson flame swept out mightily. It suddenly covered the surrounding void in an instant. In the 10,000-mile range, it became a crimson sea. The flaming giant that Fiery King became was the only ruler of the Crimson Sea. Looking at the sight, Jian Wushuang's eyes stared with his eyes wide opened. This is Scarlet Kingdom. Scarlet Kingdom. Yes, Fiery King was performing Scarlet Kingdom's technique then. The difference compared to Jian Wushuang's was that the Scarlet Kingdom technique that Fiery King performed was at a peak level. It could cover a total expanse of 10,000 miles. As for Jian Wushuang, even if he performed Scarlet Kingdom with all his power, the coverage wouldn't be more than 10 miles. Scarlet Kingdom was a precious secret skill of Lineage of Scarlet. Fiery King is an expert from Lineage of Scarlet. Jian Wushuang was surprised. He finally found out why Fiery King said that he was his man. It turned out that the two of them belonged to Lineage of Scarlet. Rumble. A terrifying rumble sounded across the battlefield. Even if Blood Emperor and Heartless King, who were swallowed by the Crimson Sea of Fire, were to work together, they would still be in a fix from the ferocious attack of the flaming giant that Fiery King transformed into. In a short while, they were trembling in the balance and were dispirited. Consider this a lesson that I teach you. If there's a next time. Humph. Fiery King's loud voice was heard across the universe, and the crimson sea of fire that covered the surroundings slowly stopped spreading. In the sea of fire, Blood Emperor and Heartless King glared at Fiery King in anger. Let's go. The two of them turned and left immediately, without hesitation. The universe quickly calmed down. The flame on Fiery King slowly dispersed and he returned to his original look of a brawny man. He suddenly plunged forward and appeared before Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang, Fiery King looked excited when he looked at Jian Wushuang. Thank you, Mr. Fiery King, for lending a helping hand, Jian Wushuang quickly thanked him. Ha, you are from lineage of Scarlet, a junior to me. Of course I have to save you. Plus, even if I don't, you should be able to escape, right? Fiery King laughed. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrow but did not deny it. True. He had already freed himself from Heartless King's consciousness prison and he had already performed the secret skill of dragon blood. Even if Fiery King didn't appear, he would be able to run away too. Let's go. Find a place and let's have a chat, Fiery King smiled. Very soon, the two of them found a remote cave dwelling in Darkness Mountain. In the cave dwelling, Jian Wushuang and Fiery King sat opposite one another. Jian Wushuang, where did you cultivate the secret skill from Scarlet Kingdom? Fiery King asked. At Snow Kingdom in Dayu World, on Scarlet Island, Jian Wushuang briefly explained the process of him cultivating Scarlet Kingdom. After he heard Jian Wushuang's description, Fiery King nodded his head and revealed a gratified expression. Luckily, although lineage of Scarlet is on the decline, it has never once been destroyed. Mr. Fiery King, would you be the creator of lineage of Scarlet? Jian Wushuang asked. Back when he was on Scarlet Island, the master of Scarlet Island once told him the history of lineage of Scarlet. He said that lineage of Scarlet was created by a top-notch expert above universe god. Lineage of Scarlet was once brilliant but it was in decline later on. Creator? I guess so, Fiery King nodded faintly. As expected, Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. Then, Fiery King started telling him the story. Many years ago, I created lineage of Scarlet in the kingdom and the kingdom was one of the 72 kingdoms that Sky Sword Mountain controlled. Then, because there was a real god, me, who took charge, lineage of Scarlet was considered a great force in the Holy Kingdom. There was almost no one who dared to provoke us, but then. Because of an accident, I offended Sky Sword Mountain and it could be said that I offended Sky Sword Mountain greatly. Then, I understood that lineage of Scarlet was in danger. Hence, I made a prompt decision and ordered the experts of lineage of Scarlet to immediately leave the Holy Kingdom while I also opted to run away. However, Sky Sword Mountain was too powerful. In the end, I was arrested by experts from Sky Sword Mountain and imprisoned here in Sky Sword Prison. Fortunately, lineage of Scarlet escaped. Fiery King smiled. Jian Wushuang sighed. The 72 holy kingdoms that Sky Sword Mountain controlled and the distance to Snow Kingdom was very far. Scarlet Kingdom ran away from the 72 holy kingdoms into Snow Kingdom and steadied its foundation in an ordinary world in Snow Kingdom. They really ran very far away. I thought I'd forever be imprisoned in Sky Sword Prison and never meet any junior of lineage of Scarlet. I never thought that I'd be able to meet you today. Fiery King looked at Jian Wushuang with a smile on his face. Chapter 1472, Hopeless. Chapter 1472, Hopeless. To be able to see a junior from the lineage of Scarlet in my remaining years and know that lineage of Scarlet still exists in eternal chaotic world, I, Fiery King, can die with no regrets. Fiery King smiled and said. Jian Wushuang could understand Fiery King's feelings. Over the years, he had been imprisoned in Sky Sword Prison and he was cut off from the outside world. He wasn't sure how Lineage of Scarlet was doing and whether if it was destroyed. He had been worried. Then, when he finally met Jian Wushuang, he found out that Lineage of Scarlet still existed and had already steadied their foundation in Snow Kingdom. Fiery King could finally feel at ease. Mr. Fiery King, don't worry. With your ability, there will definitely be a day when you can leave Sky Sword Prison, Jian Wushuang said. Leave? Fiery King shook his head slowly. It isn't that easy to leave Sky Sword Prison. I'm afraid there won't be a day where I leave here. Why? Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows. From Jian Wushuang's point of view, Fiery King was widely recognized as the top expert. Even the other three kings had to bow down before him. Such an expert, if he were to carry out a major massacre, should be able to kill many experts. Through accumulation over the years, it would just be a matter of time until he fulfilled the criteria to leave the prison. Jian Wushuang, you're only a universe god. To a universe god, as long as you kill 100 of universe god of the same level or 10 real gods, you can leave. However, for a real god, the criteria is different. Fiery King smiled faintly as he explained. A real god who wants to leave Sky Sword Prison has to kill 1,000 experts and they must not take their levels into consideration. In other words, even if you kill real gods of the same level, it will be counted as one. You know everyone's defense power in Sky Sword Prison is very high, they aren't that easy to kill. Plus, there are not many experts in Sky Sword Prison. It is too difficult for a real god to kill 1,000 experts in the prison. It's really difficult, but there's a string of hope, Jian Wushuang said. Yes, there's a string of hope. The hope is to accumulate over the years. Even if I only kill one expert every 10,000 years, I'd be able to fulfill the criteria in 10 million years. However, the mentioned criteria was for ordinary real god, but I am one of the 4 kings in Sky Sword Prison. As kings, our criteria to leave is even tougher. Fiery King said. Tougher? Could it be that they ask you to kill 10,000 experts? Jian Wushuang asked. 10,000? No, as kings, we have to kill 1,000, but the 1,000 that we kill have to be real gods. Fiery King said. What? Jian Wushuang was surprised. Kill real gods. Kill 1,000 real gods, then he could leave Sky Sword Prison. How could real gods be killed so easily? Plus, comparing real gods to universe gods, the numbers were much less. Since the birth of Sky Sword Prison, including all real gods that had died and left, he reckoned there weren't more than 300 of them. There weren't even more than 300 real gods who had been imprisoned in Sky Sword Prison. How could the 4 kings kill 1,000 real gods? Jian Wushuang, now you know why I felt hopeless about leaving Sky Sword Prison. Fiery King smiled faintly, but Jian Wushuang saw the smile and found it extremely sad. Jian Wushuang grew distressed. At the same time, he pitied Fiery King and the other 3 kings. The 4 kings in Sky Sword Prison looked so enchanting and were treated as overlords in Sky Sword Prison. But, in actual fact, the 4 kings were much sadder than any other experts in Sky Sword Prison. After all, although it was dangerous for the other experts to stay in Sky Sword Prison and the probability of them falling wasn't low, they stood a chance to leave Sky Sword Prison after all. However, the 4 kings seemed to not stand a chance at all. To kill 1,000 real gods. Even Jian Wushuang himself reckoned that it would be hopeless. Of course, if we 4 kings want to leave Sky Sword Prison, there is another possibility, Fiery King said. How? Jian Wushuang turned to look at Fiery King. Break through, and become the 2nd stage of real god. Fiery God explained, the stage is second to Almighty. It is far stronger than ordinary 1st stage real god. Experts at that stage, even Sky Sword Prison can't imprison them. Hence, the owner of Sky Sword Mountain once said that if we were to break through to that stage, we could leave as well. It's a pity that it isn't that easy to break through to that stage. Eternal chaotic world, there are so many real God experts. But just how many of them could really take that leap? At least, from what I know, I am hopeless in this life. Not only myself, but the other three kings don't have any hope either. Jian Wushuang's face grew grave as he nodded in agreement. Alright, forget about that. Let's talk about you. Fiery King looked at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang, why are you imprisoned in Sky Sword Prison? Why are you chased after by Blood Emperor and Heartless King? Heir. This, Jian Wushuang thought for a while and briefly told Fiery King the story. Oh, lineage of Star. You are a disciple of Star Palace? Fiery King looked at Jian Wushuang in surprise. He had once wandered in 10 cultivation sanctuaries alone. He had heard of lineage of Star and disciple of Star Palace before. Ha, your higher up in lineage of Star is quite interesting. He sent you to murder in Sky Sword Mountain. It was obviously to provoke the owner of Sky Sword Mountain. Fiery King laughed. No one denied it. Jian Wushuang pouted, then briefly explained why Blood Emperor was after him. Holocaust sect. You mean Blood Emperor is Holocaust sect's man? Fiery King's gaze turned cold as he stood up. I am only guessing, but it should be that, Jian Wushuang answered. He believed in King of Venomous Worm's judgment. Plus, from his viewpoint, that was the only reason for Blood Emperor to come after him. Humph, the bastard from Holocaust sect. Fiery King's voice was cold. Previously when I was wandering in Eternal Chaotic World, I once saw Holocaust sect's doings. Their vicious formation refined all living things in 21 worlds in less than 1,000 years. Back then, in the Holy Kingdom, it stirred up a great commotion and even got the owner of Sky Sword Mountain involved. It is said that the owner of Sky Sword Prison personally investigated the case. However, the people from Holocaust sect ran away too quickly and didn't fall in the hands of the owner of Sky Sword Mountain. I never thought that the Sky Sword Mountain that we are currently in had people from Holocaust sect too, and that he would be one of the 4 kings. Chapter 1473, 3000 Years. Chapter 1473, 3000 Years. Holocaust sect, in Eternal Chaotic World, was hated by everyone. Especially by Fiery King, who once watched the merciless act of Holocaust sect with his own eyes, and loathed them even more. It's a pity that it isn't Eternal Chaotic World, but Sky Sword Prison. Even if we find out about Blood Emperor's true identity, we can't do anything about him, Fiery King continued. The experts in Sky Sword Prison are all prisoners. They have trouble even keeping themselves alive. Who would be bothered if Blood Emperor was one of the experts from Holocaust sect? As for myself, even if I intend to take action against Blood Emperor, under the limitation of divine power, I can only suppress him and torture him. But it's impossible for me to kill him. Fiery King was publicly acknowledged as the #1 expert in Sky Sword Prison. Even if it was him, under the condition where his divine power was limited, he couldn't kill a king. Jian Wushuang, if Blood Emperor is really after you because of your blood-killing plate armor, you have to be careful. Fiery King looked at Jian Wushuang and exhorted. Blood-killing plate armor, to us ordinary universe gods, isn't very useful. However, to Blood Emperor, who is from Holocaust sect, it is very useful. If he were to get blood-killing plate armor, he could figure out a way to enhance the power of blood-killing plate armor over the years. He could level up blood-killing plate armor into blood-killing king armor. Once he obtains blood-killing king armor, I dare say that his fighting power should be able to reach the 2nd stage of real god. By then, he could leave Sky Sword Prison. And this should be his only chance to leave Sky Sword Prison. He definitely won't let the chance slip. Hence, even if I just taught him a lesson earlier and warned him, he will definitely not hesitate to take action against you if he has a chance. I understand, Jian Wushuang nodded. He also knew that blood-killing plate armor was useful to Blood Emperor. Before blood-killing plate armor, Blood Emperor definitely wouldn't be bothered by Fiery King's threat. After all, although Fiery King was strong, he couldn't kill him. At first, I intended to train myself at Blood Emperor's Darkness Mountain for a while. Then, when my flowing light phantom reaches the second level, I will start my massacre plan. However, it seems like my plan has to be delayed. Jian Wushuang's face grew solemn. Blood Emperor had his eyes on Jian Wushuang. If he were to continue training in Sky Sword Prison or launch a massacre plan, Blood Emperor might find him again. Then, he wasn't sure if he could keep himself alive in a fight against Blood Emperor. Jian Wushuang, if you want to train, why not just return to Fiery Prison with me? Fiery King said. Fiery Prison? Jian Wushuang was surprised. We, the 4 kings, each have our territories in Sky Sword Prison. Blood Emperor's territory is here in Darkness Mountain, while mine is in Fiery Prison. It is much bigger than Darkness Mountain and there are more experts there too. Plus, it is my territory. You can fight against anyone as training. Regardless of how much Blood Emperor is dying to get the blood-killing plate armor from you, he doesn't have the guts to barge into Fiery Prison to hunt you down. Plus, he can't hunt you down anyway, Fiery King suggested. Great idea, Jian Wushuang beamed with joy. What he lacked was training. There was still room for improvement in terms of his power. Once he improved his power, he would be confident enough to fight against Blood Emperor. By then, even if he were to wander in Blood Emperor's territory, Darkness Mountain, Blood Emperor could only sit and watch but couldn't do anything about him. If so, let's depart immediately. Jian Wushuang immediately departed to Fiery Prison with Fiery King. Fiery Prison was just like rolling hills, but most of the hills were made of volcanoes. At that very moment, among the scorching hot volcanoes, Jian Wushuang stood with his sword while there was a short elderly in red armor before him. The short elderly held a red hammer in each hand while he revealed a smile on his face. Jian Wushuang, did you offend Mr. Fiery King? Mr. Fiery King sent us a message that, if we were to ever come across you, we have to try our best to kill you. Oh. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows and wasn't surprised. After all, it was a requirement that Fiery King had suggested. As he wanted to train himself in Fiery Prison, it naturally had to be a life-and-death challenge. If the experts in Fiery Prison were to hold back their power, the training wouldn't be as effective. Want to kill me? I shall see if you have the ability to, Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. Kill. The short elderly didn't bullshit anymore. There was a chilly gleam in his eyes as he charged forward. Hong! Hong! The 2 red hammers pierced the air and slammed down toward Jian Wushuang with boundless power. Jian Wushuang immediately wielded his sword to block. From that day onwards, Jian Wushuang wandered in Fiery Prison alone and exchanged blows with many experts in Fiery Prison. There were more experts in Fiery Prison than in Darkness Mountain, especially experts on the 2nd level. There were a total of 8 in Fiery Prison itself. The others were made up of many real gods and universe gods on the peak of the 3rd level. These people were suitable for Jian Wushuang to train himself on. Plus, the experts didn't know Jian Wushuang's relationship with Fiery King. They even thought Jian Wushuang had offended Fiery King, which explained why Fiery King was so angry that he wanted him dead. Hence, the experts in Fiery Prison who came across Jian Wushuang tried their best to kill Jian Wushuang. But Jian Wushuang's defense power was extremely strong and he could barely deal with them. During his training, Jian Wushuang's power was increasing gradually. The years flew past. In the blink of an eye, it had been 3,000 years. For the past 3,000 years, Jian Wushuang had been fighting vigorously with all the experts in Fiery Prison. In addition to the 1,300 years that he had been in Sky Sword Prison, he had been imprisoned for 4,300 years. 4,300 years was an extremely long time to Jian Wushuang. In Fiery Prison, on the top of a huge volcano, on the border of the volcano crater, Jian Wushuang sat in silence, alone. He slowly opened his eyes and revealed a joyous expression. 3,000 years. I have been cultivating and comprehending in fiery prison for 3,000 years. I have finally comprehended the third image of the painting of understanding sword via reincarnation. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly while he felt a despondent mood. He was a person of quick comprehension and he possessed high innate advantage in terms of comprehension towards reincarnation doctrine. He didn't use too much time to fully comprehend the first two images of the painting of understanding sword via reincarnation. However, he had used a total of 3,000 years to comprehend the third image and he had many related trainings in the past 3,000 years. Chapter 1474, Visiting Darkness Mountain Again. Chapter 1474, Visiting Darkness Mountain Again. Heaven Way is unfathomable. Furthermore, the deeper you dig into it, the more difficult it is to comprehend. Jian Wushuang, you are only a universe god after all, and you are only a universe god in the second heaven. To be able to comprehend the third image of the painting of understanding sword via reincarnation in 3,000 years is already very impressive. You must know that an ordinary real god might not even reach your level in 300,000 years or 30,000 years, let alone 3,000 years. King of Venomous Worm's voice rang in Jian Wushuang's head. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. He knew that a universe god was different from a real god. Once he reached the level of a real god, it would be much easier to comprehend Heaven Way as compared to a universe god. A universe god who could comprehend a slight bit of power of Heaven Way was already considered a top genius. To a real god, comprehending power of Heaven Way was something common. Although it took me longer, I have reached this step regardless, Jian Wushuang smiled. The step was referring to passing through the first level of Doctrine Palace. Jian Wushuang, who had fully comprehended the third image of the painting of understanding sword via reincarnation, had possessed the power to pass through the first level of Doctrine Palace. In other words, his comprehension of power of Heaven Way alone wasn't any weaker than the four kings in Sky Sword Prison. In terms of divine power, they were on the same level as well due to the fact that real gods were restricted. Then, compared to the four kings, he reckoned their only difference was their created unique skills. Jian Wushuang was only a universe god in the second heaven after all. The highest limit that he could reach was to create a beginner real god unique skill. However, it was different for real god. The unique skills created by the four kings in Sky Sword Prison were much stronger. I am definitely weaker in terms of unique skill. However, I have many trump cards and techniques. On top of that, my divine body is strong. It should be sufficient to fight against Blood Emperor. If so, I can begin my massacre plan very soon. There was light shimmering in Jian Wushuang's eyes. Over the years, he had been wandering in fiery prison for training and never once left because of the threatening existence of Blood Emperor. He never had the confidence to fight Blood Emperor, which led to a temporary hold on his massacre plan. However, it was different then. On that day, Jian Wushuang had found Fiery King. You're ready to leave fiery prison. Where do you intend to go? To wander around and hunt down experts? Fiery King looked at Jian Wushuang. No, I do not intend to wander around. I plan to head over to Darkness Mountain directly. Jian Wushuang said. Darkness Mountain, Blood Emperor's enemy's nest. Fiery King's face grew solemn as he looked at Jian Wushuang. You seem to be confident in dealing with Blood Emperor? Yes, Jian Wushuang smiled. In Sky Sword Prison, there shouldn't be anyone who has the power to kill me. Not even Fiery King yourself, I'm afraid. Oh, so confident. Fiery King raised his eyebrows. If so, I will not say more. You already have my communication token. If you run into any trouble in Darkness Mountain, send me a message. Alright, Jian Wushuang nodded. Then, he immediately departed. Fiery King looked at Jian Wushuang's shadow and sighed with emotion. 3,000 years ago, when this boy fought Blood Emperor, it was difficult for him to stay alive by giving his all. But today, 3,000 years later, he is so confident that he can stay alive before Blood Emperor and even me. TSK, his speed of improvement is terrifyingly fast. My lineage of Scarlet has an impressive young man. I hope that this young man stands a chance to leave Sky Sword Prison. Sky Sword Prison, Darkness Mountain. It had been 3,000 years since Jian Wushuang last came to Darkness Mountain, which was Blood Emperor's territory. In the void above all rolling hills, Jian Wushuang in a crimson robe, carrying a sword behind him, was walking forward slowly. 3,000 years ago, Blood Emperor and the experts under his command drove me to a miserable corner. I hid in the cave dwelling underground for 100 years but didn't dare to pop up. In the end, he even asked Heartless King to look for me. If it wasn't for Fiery King's arrival, even if I could have escaped Blood Emperor and Heartless King's chase, I could only have found a place to hide again. The debt from 3,000 years ago, Jian Wushuang is coming to take revenge today. Jian Wushuang's gaze was cold and his soul power spread across wantonly. In 2 days, Jian Wushuang's soul power detected an expert's existence. Universe God. Jian Wushuang towering in the void, and he could clearly feel an expert in a cave dwelling in a mountain afar with his soul power. The expert was just a universe god and he was only on the 3rd level. Although this universe god has good defense power, it's a piece of cake for me to kill him with my current power. However, he's only a universe god. Even if I killed him, it won't be of much help to me. Jian Wushuang shook his head and left. He was also only a universe god. The criteria for him to leave Sky Sword Prison was that he either kill 100 universe gods or kill 10 real gods. If it were like before, when Jian Wushuang had not had enough power, he could only figure out a way to kill 100 universe gods in order to bail himself out from Sky Sword Prison. But now, he had absolute power and he was leaning towards the latter option. Killing 1 real god is equal to killing 10 universe gods. It is obviously a worthy choice. Jian Wushuang smiled and continued to search through Darkness Mountain. His soul power was a great advantage that he had. Taking advantage of his soul power, it was too easy for him to find those experts in Darkness Mountain. In a few days' time, Jian Wushuang had found a real god. Real God Huiyuan, on the 3rd level in Sky Sword Prison, a real god that has yet to grasp Heaven Way. Plus, he is an expert under Blood Emperor's command. 3,000 years ago, he was among the real gods who were searching for me within the 1 million miles range. Jian Wushuang smirked coldly and instantly plunged towards the marsh where real god Huiyuan was at. In the huge marshland that was up to 100 miles wide, real god Huiyuan had opened up a cave dwelling below the marshland. Over the years, real god Huiyuan had been staying there. It was a beautiful cave dwelling. It was spacious and there were various decorations. They were all brought in from outside the prison by real god Huiyuan himself. It was rather luxuriantly decorated. On an exquisite stone bed in the middle of the cave dwelling, real god Huiyuan was lying casually with wine and food by his side. All that was missing were a few beauties and maidservants serving him. If he had that too, no one would have been able to tell that he was a prisoner. Chapter 1475, Real God Huiyuan. Chapter 1475, Real God Huiyuan. Sigh, I should not have done anything to that royal disciple secretly for such a small benefit back then. Otherwise, I, Huiyuan, would not have been locked up in this Sky Sword Prison. Moreover, this imprisonment is for 8 million years, real God Huiyuan sobbed as he lay down. Back then, he was considered a well-respected overlord in a region of the Holy Kingdom. However, due to a rash decision, he had been imprisoned in the Sky Sword Prison for a total of 8 million years. Initially, real God Huiyuan still had hope that he could accomplish the criterion of the Sky Sword Prison to kill 1,000 universe gods and then leave the prison. However, he soon realized that meeting such criterion was merely a futile hope. Not to mention leaving after achieving the criterion, it was already very difficult for him to keep himself alive in the prison. After all, to some of the universe gods who stood at the top in the Sky Sword prison, it would be a lot easier to kill a real god like him than to kill 10 universe gods. As such, it was natural that some universe gods had their eyes on him, such as the 2 demonic universe gods who were of the 2nd level. Under conditions where his divine power was restricted, he was not the 2 demonic universe gods' opponent. Moreover, just keeping himself alive was difficult. As such, he chose to be under the command of the Blood Emperor. Although he lived his life under poor circumstances for 8 million years, at the very least, he would still be able to keep himself alive. I don't even know when Hui Yuan, will be able to leave this shitty place. Real God Hui Yuan was swearing secretly. However, at that moment, boom! A wave of tyrannical divine power erupted abruptly and struck the swamp that he was in directly. In no time, the whole swamp was lifted up. Furthermore, the impressive divine power also spread mercilessly to the cave that he was in. Whoosh! The cave that real God Hui Yuan was in broke into pieces instantly and he plunged out immediately. Real God Hui Yuan appeared at the higher end of the void. As he looked at the swamp that had been completely flattened, he became extremely furious. Jian Wushuang, is that you? Real God Hui Yuan stared at the blood-robed youth who was standing in front of him. Real God Hui Yuan, I trust you have been well, Jian Wushuang giggled. How dare you? Even though you know that the Blood Emperor is looking everywhere to kill you, you still dare to come to the Darkness Mountain. Moreover, you also destroyed my cave. Do you really think that with the Fiery King as your supporter, no one in the Sky Sword prison will do anything against you? Real God Hui Yuan shouted angrily. Ha, the Fiery King is indeed giving me support. However, I have come to the Darkness Mountain alone this time around. Since the Blood Emperor wishes to kill me so much, by all means, bring it on, Jian Wushuang laughed. Very good, I shall send a message to the Blood Emperor now. Real God Hui Yuan took out a token immediately. Jian Wushuang crossed his arms and stood at his position. He did not interfere and allowed Real God Hui Yuan to send the message. After a short while. Have you finished sending your message? Jian Wushuang's laughter could be heard. Real God Hui Yuan stored his token. However, his eyes had already squinted slightly. This Jian Wushuang did not stop me even though he saw me sending a message to the Blood Emperor. Could it be that he isn't scared due to his strong backing? Real God Hui Yuan, since you have finished sending your message, isn't it about time that you think about your own situation? Jian Wushuang chuckled. Why? Could it be that you still wish to use us real gods as your whetstones, just like before? Real God Hui Yuan's voice sounded grave. Whetstone? No, my tough training is more or less over. Now I must think of a way to leave the Sky Sword prison. You should know the criterion to leave as well. As I am a universe god, I must either kill 100 universe gods or 10 real gods to leave. As for you, you are my first target, Jian Wushuang grinned. Kill me? By yourself? Real God Hui Yuan sneered, what a joke. I am a real god. In the Sky Sword prison, apart from the 4 kings, who could kill me? Before this, when I first came to the Sky Sword prison, I also met a person known as Universe God Long Xiu. He was more confident than you and claimed that in the whole Sky Sword prison, apart from the Heartless King, no one could kill him. However, he died later on and he was killed by me, Jian Wushuang said apathetically. You killed Universe God Long Xiu. Real God Hui Yuan's eyes narrowed. Universe God Long Xiu's name was famous in the Sky Sword prison. Although he was only a universe god, his ability to keep himself alive was way greater than a real god like himself. However, he had died at the hands of Jian Wushuang. You shall join Universe God Long Xiu as well. Jian Wushuang's eyes glowed with murderous intent. Buzz! Majestic sword essence rose at once. When the foot of Jian Wushuang, who was standing quietly in the void, originally moved, 9 shadows burst forth in a split second at the same time. The 9 shadows pierced through the void easily and appeared in front of real God Huiyuan. This is Universe God Long Xiu's secret skill of martial art movement. Real God Huiyuan was shocked. However, what followed after that was a roar. No matter what, you are merely a universe god. Do you think that I will be afraid of you? Boom! Majestic divine power also burst forth from real God Huiyuan's body. All the hair on his body turned scarlet. His eyes turned stringent and his body became bigger. It was as though he had become a real fire ape. Moreover, he was holding a completely red stone rod. The stone rod was 3 meters long and it was as thick as a person's arm. When real God Huiyuan swung the stone rod, he unleashed an earth-shaking power instantly. Go to hell. Real God Huiyuan's face distorted. Under the condition of his divine power being restricted, he had already unleashed all his power, unique skills and secret skills to their maximum. All his power was converged into the stone rod alone. As for Jian Wushuang, who was in front of him, with a flash of the 9 shadows, figures appeared and wielded the Blood Mountain sword. Crimson light. Swish. It was so fast that it was as if a crimson-colored lightning had appeared in midair. It was so fast that it was ridiculous. The crimson-colored sword light and the boundless void. In the places which the sword light passed, a great amount of blood-colored sword light was left behind and did not dissipate even after a long time. In no time, the sword light collided head-on with real God Huiyuan's red stone rod. Both Jian Wushuang and real God Huiyuan had unleashed the unique skills of real gods. Moreover, the divine power that both of them had released were about equal. However, what was different was that the sword light that Jian Wushuang had executed contained the power of reincarnation. Moreover, it was different from 3,000 years ago. At present, his comprehension of the reincarnation doctrine had already achieved the standards of the Doctrine Palace's first level. Hence, when the power of reincarnation was used, its power was at least 10 times stronger than before. This was still in comparison to the past. As for real God Huiyuan, he had never possessed the slightest bit of the power of Heaven Wei. This collision. Puff. Real God Huiyuan coughed out a big mouthful of blood straight away. His blood covered his hair, causing his hair, which was already scarlet in color, to become even redder. The aura on real God Huiyuan's body also decreased by a huge amount immediately. He retreated in a pathetic state and it was only after quite a while that he managed to regain his posture. Die. As soon as Jian Wushuang's body moved, 9 shadows appeared. He did not give real God Huiyuan any time to catch his breath. Chapter 1476, Massacre began. Chapter 1476, Massacre began. 1 stroke. He caused me severe injury with just 1 stroke. How could he be that powerful? Real God Huiyuan was still dumbfounded. One should know that he was a real god. Although he was the weakest kind of real god and his divine power was restrained, he was at the peak of the 3rd level in Sky Sword Prison. Under the circumstances of them fighting head-on, the sword principle that Jian Wushuang had performed broke his stick and heavily injured him simultaneously. What kind of power was that? Even out of the real gods who were at the peak of the 2nd level, there was barely anyone who had such power. Run, hurry up and run. Real God Huiyuan was in panic mode. He had entirely lost his courage to fight against Jian Wushuang. After all, his defensive power was ordinary. Jian Wushuang had caused him severe injury with 1 stroke. If he were to perform another few strokes, he would definitely be dead. Jian Wushuang smirked at the sight of real God Huiyuan running away. Then, the divine power in his body started churning within. The secret of dragon blood. The secret skill could be used for making an escape, it could also be used to hunt someone down. Even though it was only the first layer of the secret skill of dragon blood, it had increased Jian Wushuang's speed tenfold and the expense of divine power was within Jian Wushuang's endurance. In combination with the secret skill of flowing light phantom, Jian Wushuang caught up to real god Hui Yuan in a short time. Then, he instantly performed the sword principle. No! Real god Hui Yuan let out a shrill cry and tried his best to withstand the attack. However, in a short while, Hong! A terrifying power made real god Hui Yuan's divine body quiver madly. In the end, it collapsed. Then, Jian Wushuang buried real god Hui Yuan's life nuclei in oblivion. Real god Hui Yuan, who had been imprisoned in Sky Sword Prison for a total of 8 million years, died. In the void, Jian Wushuang stood there, looking at real god Hui Yuan's cold body, and he felt extremely emotional. Real god, he is a real god. I killed a real god. There was an unprecedented light in Jian Wushuang's eyes. Humph. However, he was only a real god of the bottom rank. So what if you killed him? There's nothing to be excited about. Plus, this real god is in Sky Sword Prison where his divine power was restrained. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to kill him, King of Venomous Worm's voice was heard in his head. Of course, even when we're out of Sky Sword Prison, a real god with ordinary divine power and unique skill like real god Hui Yuan, and never once comprehended the power of Heaven Wei, you could be evenly matched with them with your current power. Jian Wushuang smiled. In Sky Sword Prison, the divine power of a real god was restrained. It did cut down the real god's power drastically. However, even if real god Hui Yuan could have erupted perfectly, he could really be matched evenly with his current power. I killed real god Hui Yuan. Blood Emperor should be the first to receive the news. I wonder what his response will be, Jian Wushuang muttered. However, regardless of his response, I will not be afraid of him. Plus, real god Hui Yuan is just the beginning. Then, let's begin the massacre. With boundless rage, Jian Wushuang continued to start hunting for his prey in Darkness Mountain. In the middle of Darkness Mountain, in the Crimson Castle. The elderly with blade-like eyebrows in a crimson long robe, Blood Emperor, sat on his throne in the utmost position of the hall. Before him, a lady in green stood politely. Jian Wushuang, he came to my Darkness Mountain again. He has guts. Blood Emperor looked cold. Could it be because he thought I wouldn't dare to kill him with Fiery King backing him up? Blood Emperor sneered at the thought. Although Fiery King was strong and he wasn't his match, he only maintained a respectful distance but was not afraid or fearful of him. After all, Fiery King couldn't kill him. But Jian Wushuang had blood-killing plate armor on him. It would help him to increase his power tremendously. Plus, it was his only hope to leave Sky Sword Prison. Hee, as Jian Wushuang is so arrogant, that'd be great. I am worried that I will have no opportunity to kill him. Blood Emperor smirked coldly and lifted his head. Go, immediately send Hui Yuan a message. Let him figure out a way to drag Jian Wushuang over. Even if he can't delay him, watch him for me. I am coming after him personally. Yes. The lady in green nodded and immediately sent real god Hui Yun a message. After a while, the lady in green creased her eyebrows. Why? Blood Emperor asked. I have no idea what happened, but real god Hui Yuan didn't reply, the lady in green said. No reply. Could he be fighting against Jian Wushuang? Continue to send him messages, Blood Emperor ordered. The lady in green continued to send messages. 2 hours later, the lady in green stopped messaging. The atmosphere in the hall grew creepy. It has been 2 hours. Even if he was fighting Jian Wushuang, they wouldn't be in a fight for so long and didn't even reply to any messages. However, he really didn't reply at all. There's only one possibility, which is that real god Hui Yuan has already died. Blood Emperor squinted his eyes. If he was dead, he naturally wouldn't reply. That was the only explanation. Hui Yuan died. Could it be Fiery King? Blood Emperor creased his eyebrows and then he shook his head very quickly. No way. Fiery King is widely recognized as the top expert in Sky Sword Prison. He is reliant on his own identity. Hui Yuan never once provoked him on his own. It's unlikely that he would lower himself to take action against Hui Yuan. There isn't any possibility that he would help Jian Wushuang kill Hui Yuan either. In other words, the one who killed Hui Yuan could only be Jian Wushuang. A universe god killed a real god. Blood Emperor's face grew extremely grave. In Sky Sword Prison, in a situation where divine power was capped, there was a possibility for a universe god to kill a real god. For example, the two monstrous universe gods on the second level in Sky Sword Prison had the achievement of killing a real god. Hence, Blood Emperor wasn't surprised that Jian Wushuang had reached such a stage. He was shocked at Jian Wushuang's improvement speed. When he first came to Sky Sword Prison, he was only at the third level and not even on the peak of the third level. But it has yet to reach 5,000 years' time. He has already reached the ability of the two monstrous universe gods and killed a real god. Such a terrifying speed of improvement. No wonder this boy dares to return to Darkness Mountain. It turns out that he is extremely confident about his own power. However, it is because of his confidence that I have an opportunity to kill him and take blood-killing plate armor. Blood Emperor clenched his fist and looked at the lady in green. Send a message to the experts under my command to keep an eye out for Jian Wushuang within Darkness Mountain from today onwards and report to me immediately when they see Jian Wushuang. This time, I will not give him any chance to run away. Blood Emperor was raging in anger. Chapter 1477, Insane Massacre. Chapter 1477, Insane Massacre. Jian Wushuang had killed real god Hui Yuan. Although this matter had shocked the Blood Emperor, he was not too concerned about it. It was merely a real god at the lowest level. Since he was killed, so be it. However, a mere 10 days had passed since the incident with real god Hui Yuan. Similarly, real god Qi Lin, who was under the command of the Blood Emperor, had sent a message to the Blood Emperor saying that he had met Jian Wushuang. Both of them were engaged in an intense fight and he wanted the Blood Emperor to rush over quickly. The Blood Emperor was delighted when he received the news. However, on his way to real god Qi Lin's location, he realized that there were no longer replies to the messages that he had sent. When he arrived at the scene, Jian Wushuang and real god Qi Lin had disappeared long ago and only the battlefield, which was in shambles, was left behind. In no time, the Blood Emperor confirmed that real god Qi Lin had also fallen. 1 month later, another incident occurred within the Darkness Mountain. Jian Wushuang came across a third real god known as real god Huanyu. This real god was different from real god Hui Yuan and real god Qi Lin whom he had killed. This was because real god Huanyu was someone who had learnt a small bit of the power of Heaven Wei and he belonged to real gods at the second level. When comparing abilities, he was a lot stronger than real god Hui Yuan and real god Qi Lin. However, the results were 2 rays of flittering light were shuttling back and forth in the void quickly. Real god Huanyu, it is impossible for you to escape. Jian Wushuang was filled with a murderous aura. He had already used the secret skill of dragon blood and unleashed the blazing quicksand region toward real god Huanyu crazily. Although real god Huanyu had used all his tricks, he was still unable to escape Jian Wushuang in the end. In the skies of a giant flatland, there were still remnants of huge amounts of divine power around the void. As for Jian Wushuang, he was looking down at real god Huanyu's body with a cold expression. Real god Huanyu. Among the many real gods in Sky Sword Prison, he was considered a real god who kept an extremely low profile and his ability to stay alive was decent. Under normal conditions, as long as it was not something that was at the level of the 4 kings that took action personally, no one else could kill you. However, it is a pity that the person you came across is me. Jian Wushuang murmured. Comparing abilities, although the Jian Wushuang of that moment still could not be compared to the 4 kings, he was not too far away from them. Moreover, his ability to chase after opponents was extremely great. By using the first stage of the secret skill of dragon blood and combining it with the secret skill flowing light phantom, even real god Huan Yu, who was an expert in speed, would be unable to escape from him. This allowed Jian Wushuang to possess the absolute means to kill a normal real god, and even those who had comprehended a small bit of the power of Heaven Wei and possessed the power of real gods in the second stage in the Sky Sword Prison. Furthermore, he was different from the four kings. The criterion for the four kings to leave the Sky Sword Prison was too demanding and there was almost no hope. Hence, the four kings had lost hope a long time ago. As such, even though they had very strong abilities, they did not massacre the real gods. Instead, they occupied a small area as their territory willingly and became one of the kings by allowing the real gods to depend on them. After many years, the reigning four kings had come to a mutual understanding and they would not take action against the real gods easily. Take the fiery king for an example. Even though he itched for a fight, he would only fight with the other three kings. But how about Jian Wushuang? His power at the moment was very close or even equal to the four kings. However, he was only a universe god. Hence, his criterion to leave the Sky Sword Prison was to kill 10 real gods. As such, Jian Wushuang would obviously not hesitate and take action directly. Apart from that, there was still revenge to be had against the Blood Emperor. Hence, within the Darkness Mountain, the real god experts under the command of the Blood Emperor would naturally be the first to be affected by becoming the targets of Jian Wushuang's massacre. Within the Darkness Mountain, Jian Wushuang was continuing his massacre. As for the Blood Emperor, when he received news that even real god Huan Yu had died at the hands of Jian Wushuang, he was no longer able to remain calm. It should be known that real god Huan Yu was a real god who had comprehended a small portion of the power of Heaven Wei and he belonged to real gods of the second level in the Sky Sword Prison. Even if the Blood Emperor wanted to kill him, he would need to use quite a bit of effort. However, Jian Wushuang was actually able to kill him. The Blood Emperor understood at once that Jian Wushuang's power at the moment had achieved a shocking stage already. In the whole Darkness Mountain, apart from him, no one else could compete with Jian Wushuang. After understanding this point, the Blood Emperor immediately sent a message to the experts in the Darkness Mountain who were under his command. Listen up. All of you who are in the Darkness Mountain, it doesn't matter whether you are a universe god, real god or even a real god in the second stage. All of you are to find a place to hide and lay low. In addition, hide your presence. With this, that Jian Wushuang should not be able to find you. However, if he does find you, no matter who you are, run away immediately. At the same time, send a message to me and I will rush over straight away. Remember, do not leave it to chance. Although that Jian Wushuang is a universe god, he is extremely powerful. Real god Hui Yuan and real god Qi Lin have already died by his hand. Now, even real god Huan Yu has fallen. If all of you do not start to be careful, the next one to die will be you. The Blood Emperor's message was sent out. At once, many experts in the whole Darkness Mountain were in shock. Jian Wushuang was a universe god. Moreover, it had not been over 5,000 years since he came to the Sky Sword Prison. When he first came to the Sky Sword Prison, he was only of the third level. However, at the moment, he could even kill real god Huan Yu, who was of the second level. A universe god who was able to kill a normal real god of the third level had indeed appeared before in the Sky Sword Prison. However, it was the first time that a universe god who was able to kill a real god of the second level who had comprehended a small portion of the power of Heaven Wei had appeared in the Sky Sword Prison. Everyone was surprised by this news. After that, for the sake of remaining alive, the real gods and universe gods in the Darkness Mountain started to find hiding places and kept themselves hidden immediately. Some of them hid in the forest of the tall mountains while some of them hid deep underground. All of them had hidden their presence completely. Under normal circumstances, if a real god were to conceal their presence intentionally, with the consciousness level of a universe god, it would be extremely difficult for the real gods to be discovered. However, in actual fact, No matter how the experts hid themselves or erased their presence, in front of Jian Wushuang's soul power, they were just wasting their energy. With a sweep of his soul power, any experts within its radius would be unable to escape. Comparing Jian Wushuang and the Heartless King, this was something that was more frightening about Jian Wushuang. He continued to wander around the Darkness Mountain as he was seeking the real gods wantonly. As long as they were discovered, he would attack immediately and the real gods had no chance of escaping from his hands. News poured in continuously. First, it was real god Hui Yuan, real god Qi Lin and then real god Huan Yu. What followed after that was real god Tian Yu and real god Xue Sha. In a mere 3 months, 5 real gods were killed by Jian Wushuang. It was only a mere 3 months. With this terrifying massacre that was started by Jian Wushuang within the Darkness Mountain, the whole Sky Sword prison was in an uproar in no time. Chapter 1478, Fighting Against Blood Emperor Again. Chapter 1478, Fighting Against Blood Emperor Again. In 3 months, he had killed 5 real gods. Jian Wushuang's existence already struck fear in all real gods in Sky Sword Prison. The real gods in Darkness Mountain who had attached themselves to Blood Emperor were seized by extreme fear. However, just when Jian Wushuang had met the 6th real god in Darkness Mountain and was killing the 6th real god, Blood Emperor had finally arrived. Blood Emperor had been searching for Jian Wushuang personally in Darkness Mountain when he had killed real god Hui Yuan back then. It was a pity that Darkness Mountain was rather huge. Jian Wushuang was quick in action and Blood Emperor couldn't get there in time when he was killing the few previous real gods. Until the 6th real god. In the spacious void, the breeze blowing was piercingly cold. However, the air was static. Jian Wushuang, in 3 months, 5 real gods under my command were killed. You are really capable. Blood Emperor's gaze was cold, along with boundless murderous intentions, as he glared at Jian Wushuang. Just 5 real gods. Plus, although the 5 real gods were attached to you, there were no substantial benefits to you. Even if I killed them, what effect would it have to you, Blood Emperor? Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. Blood Emperor's face grew dim. Jian Wushuang made it sound so leisurely. Although there were no substantial effects to the 5 real gods' death, what about his reputation? The 5 real gods were an appendage to him and they were killed by Jian Wushuang directly in his territory. That had led to great disgrace to him. Among the experts in Sky Sword Prison, it was probably the topic of conversation then. They were probably all making fun of him. As long as I kill you, everything will settle down. Blood Emperor fixed his gaze at Jian Wushuang. True. It'd die down after you kill me and you'll still be widely recognized as one of the overlords in Sky Sword Prison. As for the 5 real gods, there'll definitely be other real gods to go under your command in the future. However, there's only one problem. Jian Wushuang looked at Blood Emperor with a cheeky smile, that is, whether you can kill me. You have a death wish. There was a sharp gleam in Blood Emperor's eyes. Roar. There was a fierce aura soaring up, then his body immediately rose and turned into a 3-meter-tall crimson figure, covered in blood. A terrifying, imposing manner swept out. Wow! There was crimson light that plunged through the void. It was extremely creepy. It was as though the entire universe was drowning in a prison of blood. Blood Emperor. Jian Wushuang glared at the incoming Blood Emperor with his bright, sparkly eyes as he plastered a bloodthirsty smile across his face. Virum. There was an enormous amount of crimson flame which flooded in and formed a vast crimson ocean while Jian Wushuang was the king of the crimson ocean. Simultaneously, an enormous amount of blazing quicksand flowed out. Scarlet Kingdom and blazing quicksand were performed at the same time. Over the course of 3,000 years, Jian Wushuang's Scarlet Kingdom had improved under the Fiery King's guidance. He could already perform the 3rd stage of Scarlet Kingdom then. As he performed the mighty Scarlet Kingdom, Jian Wushuang's power increased by double. He moved and there were 9 shadows that appeared all of a sudden. Then, Jian Wushuang immediately wielded his sword. 9th Heaven Stroke. Swoosh! A boundless sword intention soared to the highest heaven. The moment the sword intention exploded, Blood Mountain sword in Jian Wushuang's hand suddenly increased in size. Then, a towering sword shadow appeared in the void. The sword shadow carried a boundless sword intention just like a nemesis sword. Along with the operation of Jian Wushuang's divine power, the nemesis sword swung out. 9-shade crimson knife. Blood Emperor let out a low roar too. As his figure moved, a significant horrifying crimson blade light revealed. There were crimson shadows on the crimson blade light, moving just like moving ghosts that were extremely creepy. Suddenly, the two collided. Dang! The collision of fierce force made Jian Wushuang's face grow grave. He retreated a few steps. Roar, roar, roar. There were roars reverberating in the universe simultaneously. Then, there was a demonic dragon that was formed by 9 strips of soul power plunging in the direction of Blood Emperor along with boundless imposing aura. Go! Blood Emperor waved casually and there was no blade shadow. Only a crimson light glided past. The 9 demonic dragons shattered into pieces altogether. The void before Jian Wushuang suddenly shattered and the 3-meter-tall crimson man that Blood Emperor had taken the shape of suddenly appeared from nowhere. Then, there was a crimson claw that clawed at Jian Wushuang's head at lightning speed. In the end, it pierced Jian Wushuang's head but there was no blood nor brains that flushed out. A shadow. Blood Emperor felt his pupils contract. Jian Wushuang's figure was already next to Blood Emperor. Then, Jian Wushuang's body was tense in a bow shape as he gripped Blood Mountain sword tightly. He looked like he was well prepared. 10,000 shadows. Swoosh! 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 Countless sword lights suddenly erupted. Every sword light was unbelievably fast and the power was terrifying. In that instant, there were hundreds of sword lights that were cast. The hundreds of sword lights were aiming at Blood Emperor's throat, heart, skull and the other vital parts. Every sword light's angle was tricky. 10,000 shadows was like 9th heaven stroke, they were created during Jian Wushuang's training in the past 3,000 years. They were real god unique skills. Jian Wushuang had only created 3 real god unique skills by then. Besides those 2, there was Crimson Light that he previously created. Due to the limitation of his level, the 3 sword principles were merely beginner real god unique skills. However, they were entirely different in nature. 9th Heaven Stroke, also known as Nemesis Sword, carried boundless sword intention. It focused on absolute power. 10,000 shadows was more suitable for close combat. Hundreds of sword lights launched attacks at one's vital parts at the same time, so it was hard to guard against. Crimson Light was a combination of speed and power. It'd be more suitable if it were to be used for surprise attack. At the moment the countless sword lights erupted, the vigor in Blood Emperor's body churned and formed a huge crimson beast. The crimson beast blocked Blood Emperor. Not only did it block all the sword lights, it also let out an angry bellow and charged towards Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang's body flashed creepily and he shook off the crimson beast with ease. Ha, Jian Wushuang, it seems that I have belittled you. In 3,000 years, your power has increased to the current stage. It seems that even if it is me, I have to perform some tricks to be able to kill you. Blood Emperor's cold voice reverberated across the universe. Go ahead and perform all sort of tricks. Jian Wushuang's face grew extremely solemn. If so, then you, prepare to die. There was a glimpse of murderous intention. Blood-killing demon prison. Virum. A terrifying vigor erupted from Blood Emperor's body and the vigor formed loud clouds of crimson fog that covered the sky. They flowed towards Jian Wushuang at a terrifying speed. This technique. The king of venomous worms in Jian Wushuang body was surprised. Chapter 1479, Unable to do anything. Chapter 1479, Unable to do anything. This is Holocaust Sect's blood-killing demon prison, one of the most terrifying secret skills. Jian Wushuang, you had better be careful, the king of venomous worms warned. Even without the king of venomous worms mentioning it, Jian Wushuang could already tell that this move was not normal. Come. Jian Wushuang's eyes glowed brilliantly and a vast amount of soul power burst forth from his body. In no time, a giant golden divine ape appeared out of thin air. The divine power and soul power from his body had combined beautifully. An immense amount of blood mist came forth. The blood mist contained frightening corrosive power and it engulfed Jian Wushuang's golden divine ape with a whooshing sound. The golden divine ape on the body surface of Jian Wushuang gave a fierce roar and even its giant body started to change shape under the corrosive power of the blood mist. Jian Wushuang's expression turned grave. He then manipulated his divine power and an enormous amount of sword essence burst forth at once. Swoosh! 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 Sounds of the divine power suppressing the corrosive power could be heard continuously and they carried on for 2 breaths' time. The great amount of blood mist finally dissipated completely and within it stood Jian Wushuang. The golden divine ape on his body surface had already disappeared and what had replaced it was a black tortoise. However, this black tortoise had already been corroded to the point that not much of it was left. Jian Wushuang's gaze was like lightning and he stared at the Blood Emperor in front of him. What a horrifying secret skill. Just by blocking this move alone, about 30% of my divine power has been depleted and about half of my soul power has been depleted. If such a secret skill were to be used a few more times, I would be unable to block it. However, it is fortunate that it also takes the Blood Emperor quite a bit of effort to use this move. He could feel that after unleashing this move, the Blood Emperor's aura had depleted considerably as well. At that very moment, the Blood Emperor also looked toward Jian Wushuang. However, his eyes were filled with surprise. He actually blocked it. This little kid actually blocked my blood-killing demon prison. The Blood Emperor was stunned. He knew very well how strong this attack of his was. Even in the Holocaust sect, this secret skill was extremely powerful. However, Jian Wushuang had actually blocked it while facing it head-on. It wasn't until this moment that the Blood Emperor finally understood that Jian Wushuang's abilities were on par with his own. Blood Emperor, that attack just now must have been your strongest attack. Jian Wushuang's icy-cold voice could be heard, since you have already used your strongest attack, you shall take my attack now. As soon as the words left his mouth, a vast amount of soul energy burst forth from Jian Wushuang's body again. The golden divine ape, which had been corroded by the blood mist until nothing was left, appeared again. Moreover, its body seemed to be bigger than before. As for Jian Wushuang, who was shrouded by the golden divine ape, the divine power as well as the 5-star ancient god power in his body erupted from his body and gathered in the index finger of his right hand. As Jian Wushuang's eyes turned narrow, he pointed his index finger, which gathered a vast amount of divine power and glowed brilliantly with a golden light abruptly. Ancient God's 4th finger, God's test. Boom! As soon as he pointed his finger, the heavens and earth shook. The void around the area turned completely dark. Within the endless darkness, a dark, golden-colored, giant finger that looked like it had appeared from the ancient times appeared out of thin air. This finger brought along power that could destroy the world just like the God's test which descended from the heaven and the power headed in the direction of the Blood Emperor. Ancient God's 4th finger. As a 5-star ancient god, this was the strongest attack that Jian Wushuang could manage. Judging by raw power itself, this finger was a lot more powerful than the real god's unique skills that Jian Wushuang had created and it could be considered his strongest attack at that moment. At that moment, Jian Wushuang unleashed his strongest attack. As he looked at the golden-colored giant finger moving toward him, the Blood Emperor's expression turned grave and an enormous amount of crimson light burst forth again. 9-shade crimson knife. A terrifying, bright crimson knife light appeared and swung in the direction of the dark, golden-colored, giant finger. Bam! The finger was struck by the crimson-colored knife light. This caused most of its divine power to be dissipated crazily, and a hole also appeared in the middle of the giant finger. In the end, not much power was left to do anything to the Blood Emperor. Humph! With a groan, the Blood Emperor's face turned pale and he could not help but retreat a step back. However, he regained his posture straight away. Ha! As expected of the Blood Emperor, who is one of the 4 kings. Today, I, Jian Wushuang, have learnt my lesson and I shall take my leave now. A hearty, loud peal of laughter from Jian Wushuang could be heard. However, Jian Wushuang had already unleashed the secret skill of dragon skill and plunged into the void far away. The Blood Emperor stared at Jian Wushuang's back coldly. However, he did not give chase. It was clear that Jian Wushuang's ability to escape was impressive and it would be impossible for him to catch up. Moreover, even if he did catch up, he would be unable to do anything to Jian Wushuang. In just 3,000 years, he became this strong. The Blood Emperor had mixed feelings. However, in no time, he began to send a message to the experts in the Darkness Mountain. I have already fought with Jian Wushuang. Currently, his abilities are on par with mine. As for all of you, if you do not wish to die, leave the Darkness Mountain quickly and find a place to hide. After finish sending his message, the Blood Emperor swung the sleeves of his robe, turned around and returned to his Crimson Fortress. He had already exhausted all his energy. However, he was still unable to kill Jian Wushuang. With Jian Wushuang's abilities, if he were to go on a killing spree in the Darkness Mountain, no one could stop him. Within the Darkness Mountain, when the experts under the command of the Blood Emperor received his message, all of them were dumbfounded. Even though the Blood Emperor had taken action personally, he was still unable to do anything to Jian Wushuang. The Blood Emperor personally said that Jian Wushuang's abilities were not inferior to his own. How is this possible? Even the Blood Emperor is unable to do anything. Who else is there in Darkness Mountain who can stop Jian Wushuang's massacre? Run, get out of the Darkness Mountain quickly. If we were to remain here, as soon as we are discovered by Jian Wushuang, we will definitely die. The experts in the Darkness Mountain made a move one after another. No wish to die. If they were to continue staying in the Darkness Mountain, there was a high possibility of them being discovered and killed by Jian Wushuang. However, if they were to leave Darkness Mountain and hide within the vast lands of the Sky Sword Prison, it would be extremely difficult for Jian Wushuang to find them. In the void, Jian Wushuang plunged toward the front slowly. He soon found a place and stopped so that he could recover his divine power. In the fight with the Blood Emperor, he had unleashed many moves continuously and had depleted a great amount of his divine power. This Blood Emperor is indeed strong, especially that blood-killing demon prison move of his. If not for the blood-killing plate armor protecting my body, I might have been unable to block it completely. However, the fight with him had also proven my judgment. My abilities now are indeed about enough to compete with the 4 kings, Jian Wushuang chuckled. With the king of venomous worms present, in no time, Jian Wushuang's divine power had recovered to its peak. However, at that moment, the fiery king sent a message. Chapter 1480, Jian Wushuang on the first level. Chapter 1480, Jian Wushuang on the first level. Jian Wushuang, I heard that you fought Blood Emperor again. And you were so well matched? Fiery King asked casually. Yeah, we were. But if you were to describe it as well matched, it'd be too forceful. In terms of power, Blood Emperor is stronger than I, Jian Wushuang smiled. The earlier battle looked as though they were well matched, but Jian Wushuang knew clearly that Blood Emperor was one notch above him during the fight. Don't be humble. Blood Emperor admitted himself that your power is not inferior to his, Fiery King said. Jian Wushuang kept quiet. Oh yeah, you're still in Darkness Mountain, right? Fiery King asked again. Jian Wushuang responded. I just received an update. Blood Emperor sent a message to the expert under his command for them to leave Darkness Mountain, Fiery King said. They left? Jian Wushuang was shocked. What else can they do besides leaving? Fiery King scoffed, you're obviously hunting them down. Even real God Huan Yu on the second level died in your hands. The real gods and universe god in Darkness Mountain are naturally afraid of you. Plus, your consciousness probing measure is so impressive. No matter how well they hide themselves in Darkness Mountain, they will be found by you. Under such circumstances, unless one has a death wish, why would they dare to stay back? Jian Wushuang understood then. If these real gods were to leave Darkness Mountain and hide in every corner in Sky Sword Prison covers a large expanse and even I would find it difficult to find them, Jian Wushuang said. True, Fiery King smiled. However, as they are already hiding from me, forget about them. Anyway, those who found trouble with me 3,000 years ago weren't just Blood Emperor alone, Jian Wushuang said. What do you mean? Would you be considering the experts under the command of Heartless? Fiery King said. Yes, Jian Wushuang nodded. 3,000 years ago, Heartless King came to assist Blood Emperor in killing me. Then, I already killed 5 real gods under Blood Emperor's command. As for Heartless King, how can I just let her simply avoid it? I'll go to her territory to carry out a massacre and take revenge on her. Jian Wushuang, Heartless King is different from Blood Emperor. Her consciousness attack is extremely strong. Are you confident that you can deal with her? Fiery King said. Don't worry. As I dare to visit her territory, I am definitely confident, Jian Wushuang smiled. Consciousness attack. The attack that Jian Wushuang feared the least was a consciousness attack. After all, he lit up his soul power. Even though his soul strength only had the limit of Universe God, his soul endurance power was far more impressive compared to real God. After they ended the communication link, Jian Wushuang immediately departed to where Heartless King's territory was. He arrived at Heartless King's territory and started a massacre again. The time flew past. In Sky Sword Prison, in between 2 remote mountains, there was an exquisite purple pavilion. In the pavilion, there were 2 figures seated at a long, narrow table with wine and delicacies. The 2 figures, a man and a woman, were both young and both universe gods. Universe god Tian Feng and Universe god Gu Tong were the other 2 most famous universe gods in Sky Sword Prison besides Jian Wushuang. On top of that, they were also known as monstrous. There were many prisoners in Sky Sword Prison. Excluding Jian Wushuang, there were only 28 people on the second level. Among the 28, there were 26 real gods, while the remaining 2 were universe gods, who were the 2 before him. At that very moment, universe god Tian Feng and universe god Gu Tong were drinking as they chatted leisurely. Tian Feng, have you heard about what happened in Heartless Land recently? Universe god Gu Tong asked. Such a major incident, it spread all over Sky Sword Prison so tumultuously. Of course, I know, Universe God Tian Feng smiled and continued, speaking of which, Jian Wushuang is pretty amazing. He first visited Blood Emperor's Darkness Mountain and killed 5 real gods. Then, he went to Heartless King's Heartless Land and killed 2 real gods. Among the real gods who were killed, there were some who were on the second level. They died by his hand anyway. Then, Universe God Tian Feng was impressed too. He was Universe God himself. Under the circumstances of their divine power being restrained in Sky Sword Prison, he could also kill a real god who was weak as real God Huiyuan. However, if he were to run into real gods on the second level, he could only be evenly matched at most. However, Jian Wushuang could kill real gods on the second level. He was obviously much stronger than him. I heard that Heartless King took action personally. She even performed her strongest master stroke, Life and Death 9th Heaven, but it didn't cause any effect to him, Universe God Gu Tong exclaimed. Life and Death 9th Heaven. Universe God Tian Feng looked shocked. That's a terrifying dreamland. With Heartless King's capability, if she were to perform it with her all, besides the 3 kings and a few real gods on the top of the 2nd level, theoretically, there shouldn't be anyone else who could withstand the attack in Sky Sword Prison. But this Jian Wushuang, a universe god, can withstand that attack. I wonder why his consciousness is that strong. Both Universe God Tian Feng and Universe God Gu Tong were fearful of Heartless King's strongest master stroke. Although both of their fighting powers could be compared favorably to real god on the 2nd level, they were universe gods after all. Their consciousness strength was merely on the level of a universe god's limit. If they were to run into Heartless King need not perform her strongest master stroke. They reckoned that any of her random consciousness attacks could kill them both. Heartless King and Blood Emperor both took action against him, but they couldn't do anything to Jian Wushuang. Naturally, no one could stop him from carrying out a massacre. Plus, Jian Wushuang was an accomplished universe god in terms of his consciousness-probing ability. As long as he swept with his consciousness, no one could hide or conceal their aura under his watch. Hence, the experts under the command of both kings were terrified, and they left Darkness Mountain and Heartless Land to hide in the corners of Sky Sword Prison. We are all universe gods. Both of us are known as monstrous too. However, compared to Jian Wushuang, the difference is so vast. With his capabilities, it shouldn't be long until he reaches the criteria needed to leave Sky Sword Prison. Yeah, I'm jealous of him. Universe God Tian Feng and Universe God Gu Tong sighed emotionally as they were both envious of Jian Wushuang. Then, in Sky Sword Prison, there were people who secretly listed Jian Wushuang on the 1st level. In other words, he was on the same level as the 4 kings. But no one dared to call Jian Wushuang the 5th king. It was because everyone could tell that Jian Wushuang wouldn't stay in Sky Sword Prison for long. He had already killed the 7th real god by then, and he could totally continue to massacre and kill 10 real gods. It would definitely be very easy. Chapter 1481, Leaving. Chapter 1481, Leaving. In the dark red sky, cold wind was swirling. Swoosh! Swoosh! 2 shadows, one in front and one behind, swept past the void. Real God Kong Ling, it is impossible for you to escape. Jian Wushuang's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He was staring at the shadow in front of him which was escaping, and he had already used the secret skill of dragon blood. Jian Wushuang, I am not one of the Blood Emperor's men, and I have never depended on the Heartless King. Moreover, I have never had any dealings with you before. Why must you be so ruthless? Real God Kong Ling's furious voice could be heard from the front. Ruthless? Jian Wushuang laughed coldly. Everyone, including you and I, have been thrown into the Sky Sword Prison involuntarily. I need to kill 10 real gods so that I can leave. As such, I'm sorry. As soon as his words left his mouth, the divine power that was already burning in a frenzy in Jian Wushuang's body intensified even further. With the 2nd stage of the secret skill of Dragon Skill, Jian Wushuang's speed increased by 100-fold immediately, and he caught up with real God Kong Ling instantly. Die! Jian Wushuang did not hesitate due to pity in the slightest bit, and he attacked straight away. After some time, real God Kong Ling, who belonged to the 3rd stage of real gods, was killed by Jian Wushuang. The 10th real god. Atop the void, Jian Wushuang looked down at real God Kong Ling's body with his eyes glowing brilliantly. From the time he had started his massacre in the Darkness Mountain up to the current moment, it had been 2 years. And finally, he had killed the 10th real god. Initially, Jian Wushuang had planned to release his power against the Blood Emperor and the Heartless King. Hence, the 10 real gods who had died at his hand should have been experts under the 2 kings. However, it was a pity that the experts under the command of the 2 kings were not idiots. Since it was only him executing the massacre, the experts had already left the territory of the 2 kings and found themselves a hiding place in the Sky Sword Prison. As such, Jian Wushuang had no choice but to kill those real gods who had never offended him. Buzz! Buzz! In the void, a peculiar power gathered all of a sudden. They have come. Jian Wushuang's eyes were glowing with delight. At the moment that the peculiar power gathered, all the experts in each and every corner of the whole Sky Sword prison felt it. Within the purple, exquisite attic, Universe God Tian Feng and Universe God Gu Tong raised their heads. This power. Someone is about to leave the Sky Sword prison. If I'm not wrong, the person who is leaving is Jian Wushuang, right? Apart from him, the Sky Sword prison does not have anyone else who has fulfilled the conditions to leave. He left the Sky Sword prison after less than 5,000 years. I am envious of him. Within the Crimson Fortress in the Darkness Mountain. That little kid Jian Wushuang has finally left, the Blood Emperor clenched both his fists. However, his eyes were filled with mixed feelings. Initially, he had planned to kill Jian Wushuang and acquire the blood-killing plate armor. With this, he would have a chance to leave the Sky Sword prison. However, in the end, Jian Wushuang's speed of growth had completely stunned him. Hence, he had given up hope of acquiring the blood-killing plate armor a long time ago. When he saw Jian Wushuang leaving at that moment, he heaved a sigh of relief. The Fiery King sat within a sea of fire at the bottom of a lofty volcano in the fiery prison. At that moment, he could not help but raise his head. This little kid has met the conditions. The Fiery King murmured and his face wore a smile. Fiery King, a message was delivered. Jian Wushuang, you're about to leave? The Fiery King questioned. Yes, Jian Wushuang chuckled, I am bidding my farewell to you before I leave. Thank you for taking care of me for the past few years. After I get out, I will definitely find a way to get you out. Ha! Don't think of trying to get me out. The chances are slim. You should continue training outside. For my lineage of Scarlet to have a junior like you, I can die without any regrets, the Fiery King laughed heartily. No matter what, I will do my best. After Jian Wushuang repeated himself, the peculiar power in front of him took the form of a giant hand and grabbed Jian Wushuang with lightning speed. Jian Wushuang had no way of defending himself against it and had also never even thought of defending himself against it. He was caught by the giant hand and sent into a wormhole that had opened temporarily. As the wormhole disappeared, the Sky Sword prison settled down quickly. Within a dim cave. The space opened up and with a glowing light, Jian Wushuang's body appeared in the cave. This place is. As soon as he appeared, Jian Wushuang's eyes surveyed the area. In no time, his attention was focused on a shadow sitting with its legs crossed in the area in front of him. He was a middle-aged man who carried 3 long swords and he looked like a unique, fierce sword. This middle-aged man caught Jian Wushuang's attention due to the cruel sword essence that he was releasing. This sword essence had caused even Jian Wushuang to be terrified. Suddenly, the middle-aged man opened his eyes. In a split second, a vast amount of sword essence burst forth and his cold eyes locked onto Jian Wushuang immediately. At that moment, Jian Wushuang only felt as if his neck had been strangled with great force by someone. He could neither speak nor breathe. This caused him to experience fear that he had never experienced before. The good thing was that this condition only lasted for a moment before it was undone. Jian Wushuang heaved a sigh of relief and he greeted the middle-aged man respectfully at once. I am Jian Wushuang. Greetings to the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain. What a frightening sword essence. Just a simple gaze was enough to deter Jian Wushuang from having any ideas of resisting him. This middle-aged man must be an almighty. This caused the identity of the middle-aged man in front of him to surface immediately. Little kid, how was your experience in the Sky Sword prison? The owner of the Sky Sword Mountain asked casually. Not bad, Jian Wushuang replied indifferently. Oh, the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain shot a glance at Jian Wushuang, that's right. You have been in the Sky Sword prison for more than 4,000 years. Moreover, you have also continued to improve yourself during the 4,000 years. Hence, you will not find it uninteresting. To you, this prison has become a good training place. After hearing what was said, Jian Wushuang laughed within himself. Most of the cultivators in the Sky Sword prison had been imprisoned for many years. During these years, their abilities had risen to their maximum a long time ago. Hence, there was not much hope for them to raise their abilities any further even if they wanted to. Moreover, they were unable to leave the prison. Naturally, this was a form of suffering to them. However, Jian Wushuang was completely different. In the past, you killed one of the white deacons in my Sky Sword Mountain. Moreover, you killed him within the Sky Sword Mountain, ignoring the rules of my Sky Sword Mountain. The voice of the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain turned cold. Jian Wushuang became stupefied. However, I have already imprisoned you in the Sky Sword prison as it is a rule of the Sky Sword Mountain. Since you were able to leave the Sky Sword prison by yourself, no matter what feuds you had with my Sky Sword Mountain in the past, all of them are written off. You can leave. Chapter 1482, Jian Wushuang's Request. Chapter 1482, Jian Wushuang's Request. When Jian Wushuang saw that the owner of Sky Sword Mountain had allowed himself to leave, he was delighted but he didn't move at all. Why, what's up? The owner of Sky Sword Mountain sounded cold. Jian Wushuang thought for a while and said politely, Senior, to be frank with you, I have 2 requests. I hope that Senior will agree. Ha! The owner of Sky Sword Mountain suddenly laughed. The laughter sounded casual but as it reverberated, the entire cave dwelling shook vigorously. Jian Wushuang was standing in the middle of the cave dwelling and his face went pale immediately. Luckily, he had already reached the first level of state of mind. Hence, he could continue to stand on his feet in the laughter. If it were to be any ordinary person, even a real god, as long as they wasn't on the first level of state of mind, they might have knelt on the ground. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain stopped laughing and his face grew cold. Such a joke. I am willing to let you go and I'm nice enough to do so. You have the guts to request something from me? Jian Wushuang's face grew grave. His mind and soul were quivering madly under the huge pressure that the owner of Sky Sword Mountain imposed. However, he clenched his teeth and persisted. Humph, as you're a disciple of Star Palace, tell me about it. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain glanced at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang was delighted. He took a deep breath and started saying, the first thing is that I have an enemy over the years that I've spent in Sky Sword Prison. His name is Blood Emperor. Blood Emperor is one of the 4 kings in Sky Sword Prison. I've come across him twice and I'm definite that he's from Holocaust sect. Hence, I'd like to request that you, Senior, eliminate him. Holocaust sect. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain looked at Jian Wushuang and he looked shocked. He previously thought Jian Wushuang was stupid to ask for something at a crucial moment. But from how things were looking, Holocaust sect is the public enemy of countless cultivators in eternal chaotic world. Regardless of when, as soon as an expert of Holocaust sect is found, he must be exterminated immediately. However, are you sure that Blood Emperor is from Holocaust sect? The owner of Sky Sword Mountain stared at Jian Wushuang. Yes, Jian Wushuang nodded heavily. Alright then. Wait for a bit, the owner of Sky Sword Mountain said, and then he closed his eyes. Sky Sword Prison, Darkness Mountain, in the Crimson Castle. Blood Emperor was lying leisurely on a crimson bed. Now Jian Wushuang has left, my Darkness Mountain has finally resumed its tranquility, Blood Emperor muttered to himself. He had already sent a command to all the experts, who had left Darkness Mountain to avoid Jian Wushuang previously, to return. After all, he was one of the overlords in Sky Sword Prison. If those experts who were an appendage to him weren't around, he wouldn't feel like an overlord at all. In Sky Sword Prison, in such a dull and fearless environment, his only happiness was derived from his feeling as an overlord. Suddenly. Vroom vroom. A strange force condensed in the void above Crimson Castle. This force? What's going on? Could it be that someone is leaving Sky Sword Prison again? Blood Emperor was still in astonishment, but the void above substantiated into a towering hand and grabbed him at lightning speed. Blood Emperor had no strength to resist but was caught by the huge hand. At the same time, there was a terrifying, forceful strength that flushed into Blood Emperor's body and marched unhindered in his body. It's the owner of Sky Sword Mountain. Blood Emperor had fear spread across his face. Humph, it seems like what Jian Wushuang said was right. You're really from Holocaust sect. A cold voice traveled across the universe. At the same time, it rang in Blood Emperor's head. Blood Emperor stiffened in an instant. Jian Wushuang, it's Jian Wushuang. He met the owner of Sky Sword Mountain and told him about my identity. No. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain, please let me off. Please show mercy. Blood Emperor immediately roared and pleaded. You're a lackey from Holocaust sect and you want me to show mercy? Die. Then, the huge hand exerted strength and it was like pinching an ant to death. The hand crushed Blood Emperor's body into pieces. Blood Emperor's aura immediately dispersed too. After that, the huge hand gradually vanished into thin air too. The universe resumed its original state. However, in the shattered ruins of Crimson Castle, the lady in green, who was appendage to Blood Emperor, felt an overwhelming billow in her heart. Blood Emperor is from Holocaust sect. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain found out about his identity and killed him. Jian Wushuang. Is it because of Jian Wushuang? In the dim cave dwelling, the owner of Sky Sword Mountain opened his eyes again. Jian Wushuang, you're right. Blood Emperor was really from Holocaust sect and I've exterminated him. As the owner of Sky Sword Mountain spoke, there was rage in his eyes. These people from Holocaust sect, they deserve to die. They lurk among various cultivators in eternal chaotic world. If they do not reveal some tricks from Holocaust sect, no one would be able to tell their identity. Even if it was me. You helped me this time. Otherwise, I wouldn't know that I had imprisoned an expert from Holocaust sect in Sky Sword Prison. Tell me, what's your second request? Jian Wushuang felt touched. He could clearly feel that the owner of Sky Sword Mountain was treating him slightly better than earlier. Maybe it was because he took a huge risk to request Blood Emperor's death. From the owner of Sky Sword Mountain's point of view, it wasn't a request but a helping hand from Jian Wushuang. Hence, he had a better feeling about Jian Wushuang. Another request is that I hope Senior can release one of the 4 kings, Fiery King, from Sky Sword Prison, Jian Wushuang said with extreme care. Fiery King. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain stole a glance at Jian Wushuang and smiled faintly. You and Fiery King are related? Yes, Jian Wushuang nodded. He took good care of me when I was in Sky Sword Prison. Plus, he and I are from the same lineage originally. He could be considered as one of my seniors. I naturally want him to be released. Of course, if Senior were to have any request in return, I would try my best to fulfill it. Oh. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain immediately waved his hand. If it was an ordinary real god or universe god, I would allow it because you helped me unearth an expert from Holocaust sect earlier. However, Fiery King is one of the kings in Sky Sword Prison. He is quite useful to me, so. Please return. Senior, Jian Wushuang panicked. Return first. In the future, if my Sky Sword Mountain needs assistance from Lineage of Star, we can discuss it then, the owner of Sky Sword Mountain said and then closed his eyes. Hearing that, Jian Wushuang was convinced. He didn't bother the owner of Sky Sword Mountain further but bowed politely to him before he turned to leave. Chapter 1483, Receiving his awards. Chapter 1483, Receiving his awards. After the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain had left the cave, Jian Wushuang did not stay on and he left the Sky Sword Mountain straight away. I have finally left the Sky Sword Mountain. Jian Wushuang looked at the giant Sky Sword Mountain behind him and he felt reluctant. It should be known that he had been imprisoned in the Sky Sword Prison for 4,400 years. During Jian Wushuang's training to date, this was the place that he had stayed for the longest period of time. I should send a message to Hall Master Yuan first. Jian Wushuang took out Hall Master Yuan's transmitting token. However, when he looked at the token, Jian Wushuang's expression turned strange. From his point of view, he was a disciple of the Star Palace. In order to fulfill the ultimate disciple task, he killed someone in the Sky Sword Mountain. Hence, he had broken the rules of the Sky Sword Mountain and was imprisoned in the Sky Sword Prison by the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain himself. Such a matter must have reached the ears of the lineage of Star by now. Under normal circumstances, Hall Master Yuan would have shown himself and thought of ways to get Jian Wushuang out. However, even though a total of 4,000 years had passed, Jian Wushuang continued to remain in the Sky Sword Prison and, in the end, he had depended on his own abilities to get out. Moreover, when he met the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain previously, he did not mention anything about it. Hall Master Yuan, Jian Wushuang sent a message and he got a reply promptly. Jian Wushuang, you got out of the Sky Sword Prison so quickly. Hall Master Yuan's voice was filled with a bit of surprise. Previously, I had thought that you would be able to get out within 50,000 years. Looking at it now, I was too conservative. In less than 5,000 years, you left the Sky Sword Prison with your own hard work. The Sky Sword Prison is extremely dangerous. My luck must have been good as well. Otherwise, I might not have a chance to send a message to you again, Hall Master Yuan, Jian Wushuang said. Ha! It is obvious that you are trying to blame it on me. However, you must understand that the Sky Sword Mountain is not a small force. Moreover, you were imprisoned by the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain himself. In my lineage of Star, the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain might only be willing to give some face if the Palace Master showed himself. However, the Palace Master is always meditating in seclusion throughout the year. You know this, Hall Master Yuan said. Understood, Jian Wushuang nodded his head. All right, since you have come out, return back here and meet me so that you can receive the additional rewards for completing the ultimate disciple task. After finishing speaking, Hall Master Yuan cut off the transmission. Jian Wushuang kept his token. However, his gaze was abnormal. Jian Wushuang, if my guess is not wrong, when Hall Master Yuan arranged the third part of your task, he had already guessed that you would be imprisoned in the Sky Sword Prison. In other words, you could also say that he arranged for you to be imprisoned in the Sky Sword Prison. The King of Venomous Worms' voice echoed in Jian Wushuang's head. I have also thought of this point. Jian Wushuang smiled indifferently. In actual fact, when he was just imprisoned in the Sky Sword Prison, he had already had suspicions. After all, back then when he was about to face Universe God Mo Yen, he had made ample preparations and the process had been executed perfectly. Although those real gods near Universe God Mo Yen did not realize it, the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain, who was in a distant cave, had actually realized it and took action personally. For this to happen, the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain must really possess remarkable powers. Even though he was meditating in seclusion, he still had everything that was going on in the Sky Sword Mountain in his eyes. However, there was another possibility. And that was that the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain had had his eyes on the Sky Sword Mountain for that period of time. More accurately, he had his eyes on Jian Wushuang. As long as I make a move, the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain will show up immediately and imprison me in the Sky Sword Prison. Jian Wushuang shook his head and giggled. Of course, he knew that Hall Master Yuan had done this to train him and it was out of goodwill. Moreover, although he was imprisoned for over 4,000 years in the Sky Sword Prison, in terms of abilities, he had improved greatly. Let's return to the lineage of Star. Jian Wushuang headed for the Purple Moon Sanctuary immediately. Within the dazzling galaxy of the Star Land in the Purple Moon Sanctuary. I have returned. Jian Wushuang appeared in the vast galaxy. As he looked at the neighboring galaxies, he could also faintly see a meta beast playing in the galaxy from the corners of his eyes. Hence, he could not help but wear a smile. In no time, Jian Wushuang returned to within the lineage of Star. As soon as he had returned, he went to see Hall Master Yuan. Jian Wushuang, after not seeing you for over 4,000 years, your abilities must have risen considerably, right? Hall Master Yuan looked at Jian Wushuang with a smile. About there, Jian Wushuang said. I also know a bit about the rules of the Sky Sword Prison. Since you left the Sky Sword Prison with your own abilities, you must have killed a sufficient number of experts. Tell me, how many experts have you killed? Are they universe gods or real gods? Hall Master Yuan questioned. I killed 10 real gods. Jian Wushuang did not hide the truth. Real gods? Hall Master Yuan's eyes brightened. Although the real gods in the Sky Sword Prison have their divine power restricted to some extent, their bodies and unique skills did not weaken. For you to be able to kill 10 such real gods, seems like you must possess the power to rank in the top 30 of the universe god ranking list. Should be, Jian Wushuang nodded his head. In actual fact, Hall Master Yuan only knew that he had killed 10 real gods. However, he did not know that it was done in a very short period of time. Moreover, among the 10 real gods, some of them had already comprehended a small portion of the power of Heaven Wei and belonged to the second stage of real gods. In addition, Jian Wushuang's power might even be able to rival that of the 4 kings in the Sky Sword Prison. For him to be able to do this much, Jian Wushuang's abilities could totally earn him a place in the top 20, or even higher, on the Universe God ranking list. Alright. There is no need for unnecessary words. Now, I shall give you the additional rewards for completing the ultimate disciple task. Hall Master Yuan became stern. Firstly, the additional reward for the first part of the task, 100 million Chaos Gems. For these 100 million Chaos Gems, due to the fact that you owe the Star Pavilion 47 million Chaos Gems, you will only receive 53 million Chaos Gems. Hall Master Yuan took out a Qian Kun ring and handed it to Jian Wushuang. After Jian Wushuang received the ring, he swept his eyes past it normally and kept it after that. Although 53 million Chaos Gems was not a small sum, to Jian Wushuang just then, it was not a lot. It should be known that within the Sky Sword Prison, he had killed 10 real gods. Among the 10 real gods, there were weak ones as well as strong ones. By killing the real gods, all their valuables and family keepsakes had fallen into his hands. By adding all of them up, the Chaos Gems that he possessed had already exceeded 1,000 million. For the second and third parts of the task, you have acquired the opportunity to enter the real God Hall. For the second part of the task, you are allowed to enter for a month. For the third part of the task, you are allowed to enter for 2 months. By adding them up, you are allowed to enter for a total of 3 months. I have already sent a message to inform the deacon who is in charge of guarding the real God Hall. You can go there directly, Hall Master Yuan said. Understood, Jian Wushuang nodded his head. Lastly, there is another additional reward. Real God level Chaos Unique Treasure. Chapter 1484, Blood Feather Reincarnation Armor. Chapter 1484, Blood Feather Reincarnation Armor. Jian Wushuang beamed with joy. Real God level Chaos Unique Treasure was extremely hard to come across and it was an extremely valuable treasure. Even among real gods in Eternal Chaotic World, there was hardly any who owned real God level Chaos Unique Treasure. For instance, when Jian Wushuang killed 10 real gods in Sky Sword Prison and retrieved their Qian Kun rings, there was only one real god who owned a real god level Chaos Unique Treasure, and the real god level Chaos Unique Treasure that the real god owned was a long spear. The long spear was a divine attack weapon. Jian Wushuang used a sword. Even if he received a real god-level chaos unique treasure which was a spear, he could only look at it. But then, he received a bonus reward from completing the ultimate disciple task in Lineage of Star. The bonus reward was aimed for him. The real god-level chaos unique treasure was definitely something he could use. Jian Wushuang, first tell me which segment of real god-level chaos unique treasure you'd like. Hall Master Yuan looked at Jian Wushuang. This, Jian Wushuang thought for a while, then he lifted his head and answered, to me, the most useful thing will be a real god-level chaos unique treasure in Forming Realm. Forming Realm? Hall Master Yuan stunned. Yes, Jian Wushuang nodded. He knew clearly how useful a realm treasure would be. In an evenly matched situation, a person with a realm treasure would definitely be at an advantage. Plus, even if one were in danger, he could use a realm treasure to suppress his enemy and make an escape easily. Hitting when one pleased and leaving when one wished. That was the biggest advantage of realm treasure. Jian Wushuang had always possessed a realm treasure, Blazing Quicksand Gourd. It was a pity that the stronger his power grew, the less useful the Blazing Quicksand realm would be to him. For instance, when he was in Sky Sword Prison, he gave his all to performing Blazing Quicksand realm, but it only had suppressing power to Universe God in the 3rd and 4th level to a certain extent. To Universe Gods who were stronger, the effect was rather unnoticeable. Hence, he naturally wanted to get another stronger realm treasure. However, after hearing Jian Wushuang's reply, Hall Master Yuan's expression grew strange. He said, Jian Wushuang, how dare you? Out of various kinds of treasure, realm treasure is no doubt the rarest and hardest treasure to come by. Comparing the real god-level chaos unique treasures, a realm chaos unique treasure could equal a few divine attack weapons. Jian Wushuang was speechless. Hall Master Yuan shook his head and continued, forget about real god-level realm chaos unique treasure for now. I shall prepare 2 treasures and you can choose from them carefully. Then, Hall Master Yuan waved. A green sword and crimson armor that gave out a strange aura appeared in the void before him. Jian Wushuang immediately looked at the 2 treasures. You should be able to see for yourself. The green sword is a divine attack weapon while the crimson armor is a defense treasure. Look, Hall Master Yuan looked at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang, pick the crimson armor, King of Venomous Worms' voice rang in Jian Wushuang's head. Of course, Jian Wushuang smiled faintly, Hall Master Yuan, I pick the armor. You're quite smart, Hall Master Yuan smiled too. Among treasures of the same kind, although armor couldn't be compared to realm treasure, it is more valuable than a divine attack weapon. The crimson armor is named Blood Feather Reincarnation Armor and I specially picked it for you. Blood Feather Reincarnation Armor? Jian Wushuang beamed with joy. The armor's name included the word reincarnation. Jian Wushuang, you should have comprehended reincarnation doctrine from the 4 supreme doctrines, right? Hall Master Yuan looked at Jian Wushuang with interest. Yes, Jian Wushuang nodded and admitted it straight away. That's it, then. Not only is Blood Feather Reincarnation Armor great in defense power, it contains a secret skill that can enhance one's power. The secret skill requires the power of reincarnation to trigger it. The higher one's comprehension towards reincarnation doctrine is, the stronger the power triggered from the secret skill. However, relying on your current comprehension level, it should still be rather difficult to trigger the secret skill, Hall Master Yuan said. Jian Wushuang grabbed the Blood Feather Reincarnation Armor straight away. He touched the armor gently with his palm. Jian Wushuang could even faintly resonate with the armor. Then, Jian Wushuang's smile grew even wider. Oh yeah, as you already have Blood Feather Reincarnation Armor. Please pass me the Blood-Killing Plate Armor, Hall Master Yuan looked over. Blood-Killing Plate Armor? Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows. Blood-Killing Plate Armor is Holocaust sex treasure after all. Previously, you were weaker in power and there was no better treasure. You had no choice but to use blood-killing plate armor, but now your power had increased tremendously and you have got yourself a stronger blood feather reincarnation armor. It's best to not keep blood-killing plate armor with you. The experts from Holocaust sect possess a certain sensory power to blood-killing plate armor after all. If you were to wander in eternal chaotic world with blood-killing plate armor with you, you might catch the attention of the people from Holocaust sect, Hall Master Yuan explained. Jian Wushuang nodded faintly. In Sky Sword Prison, he had been under Blood Emperor's watch because of blood-killing plate armor. In eternal chaotic world, there were definitely more hidden Holocaust sect experts. There definitely were experts stronger than Blood Emperor, but he had never come across one before. It was naturally best to pass blood-killing plate armor to Hall Master Yuan. Jian Wushuang removed the owner recognition on blood-killing plate armor, then passed it to Hall Master Yuan. This blood-killing plate armor saved my life countless times. Jian Wushuang sighed. Although he loathed to hand it over, he had no choice. Blood-killing plate armor was Holocaust sect's treasure after all. Very soon, Jian Wushuang left Hall Master Yuan's and returned to Sword Star where he resided. He saw Qiu Yu on Sword Star and briefly asked about how the internal affairs in Lineage of Star had been over the past 4,000 years. Then, Jian Wushuang opted to cultivate in seclusion. In the secret room, Jian Wushuang sat down while the crimson blood feather reincarnation armor floated before him. Start owner recognition. There was a glimpse of light shimmering in Jian Wushuang's eyes and he started the owner recognition process. Blood feather reincarnation armor was a real god-level chaos unique treasure after all. It wasn't easy for it to recognize a new owner, but fortunately, Jian Wushuang comprehended reincarnation doctrine and he was a person of quick comprehension. There wasn't any accident in the process of owner recognition. A month later, blood feather reincarnation armor turned into a crimson robe and was put on by Jian Wushuang. After owner recognition, Jian Wushuang started studying the secret skill in blood feather reincarnation armor. Jian Wushuang was surprised when he started to study it. Haha, Hall Master Yuan only knew I comprehended reincarnation doctrine, but he didn't know how much I comprehended reincarnation doctrine. Its beginner level requires one to possess comprehension level towards reincarnation doctrine that could pass through the first level of Doctrine Palace. And I happen to reach the prerequisites. Chapter 1485, Challenging the Star Tower Again. Chapter 1485, Challenging the Star Tower Again. The secret skill of the blood feather reincarnation armor indeed required a very high level of the reincarnation doctrine. Just the beginner level alone would require the power to clear the first level of the Doctrine Palace. However, Jian Wushuang had an extremely high level of comprehension of the reincarnation doctrine. During the 4,000 years in the Sky Sword Prison, he had been studying the painting of understanding sword via reincarnation intensively. As a result, he had completely understood the first 3 paintings of the painting of understanding sword via reincarnation. Hence, he possessed the power to clear the first level of the Doctrine Palace. In just a short while, Jian Wushuang managed to get the hang of the secret skill. Within the secret room, Jian Wushuang continued to sit with his legs crossed. However, he had already fully activated the secret skill of the blood feather reincarnation armor. Gosh, this power! Jian Wushuang clenched both his fists tightly and felt the enormous amount of power in his hands. It was the full release of his divine power. However, after he had activated his blood and the secret skill of the reincarnation armor, his divine power increased greatly compared to the past. As of now, my divine power is unable to rival that of a real god. However, the distance between us is no longer as huge as before, Jian Wushuang sighed. The difference in divine power between a real god and universe god was extremely great. Previously, in the Sky Prison Tower, it was because of the fact that the real god's divine power was restricted that Jian Wushuang could kill them. If not for the restriction, he could only fight with the weakest of the real gods. However, at that very moment, With the secret skill of the blood feather reincarnation armor, the difference in divine power between him and the real gods had been reduced greatly. Not only does this blood feather reincarnation armor increase my defense greatly, it has also caused my abilities as a whole to skyrocket. Jian Wushuang chuckled and he was elated. After getting the hang of the secret skill, Jian Wushuang walked out of the secret room. Next, he walked toward the Star Tower. The Star Tower was one of the 3 training grounds of the lineage of Star, and Jian Wushuang had only cleared its first level. Within the second level of the Star Tower. Swoosh! Jian Wushuang summoned 9 shadows and unleashed his sword principles. He was extremely swift and fierce. The long-bearded, strict middle-aged man who fought with him also swung his long sword and clashed with Jian Wushuang's attacks continuously. However, it was obvious that Jian Wushuang's sword principles were faster and fiercer. Their power was also a lot greater. Go down! Jian Wushuang gave a shout and a sword light struck the body of the strict middle-aged man like lightning and caused him to retreat. The second level was cleared. As for the third level. The third level was a lot more difficult than the second level. By relying on his own sword principles and his close combat abilities, he was not the stern middle-aged man's opponent. In the end, Jian Wushuang had no choice but to use the reincarnation doctrine that he had learnt. By adding reincarnation power to the sword principles, their power rose sharply and he cleared the third level straight away. After clearing the third level, Jian Wushuang did not continue. Instead, he left. I have already learnt 3 of the 4 secret skills of the lineage of Star. For these 3 secret skills, the secret skills of Star Palace could be learnt when one becomes a disciple of the Star Palace. As for Xian Mie Golden Body, I only managed to learn it after I cleared the 19th level of the illusionary mind sea. However, I am still unable to explain the origin of the secret skill of Dragon Blood. But now, I have cleared the 3rd level of the Star Tower. Hence, I am able to learn another secret skill. Thus, it is logical that I am able to learn the secret skill of Dragon Blood. As Jian Wushuang walked across the tall buildings alone, he wore an indifferent smile. Senior Wushuang. Greetings, Senior. During his walk, the disciples of the lineage of Star, who Jian Wushuang had met, all greeted him modestly. As for some of the disciples, they were talking in whispers. Senior Wushuang demonstrated his extraordinary skills in the previous battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace, and he is almost on par with Ling Feibai. Later on, he went out to the outside world alone for training, and this journey alone was for over 4,000 years. It is only until when the next battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace is about to reopen again that he finally returned. Say, do you think Senior Wushuang will be able to retain his position as a disciple of the Star Palace in the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace this time round? No idea. This is hard to say. If Senior Wushuang remains a universe god of the second heaven, then there will be no problem. However, at that moment, he and the equally famous Ling Feibai back then will have both become universe gods of the third heaven. The battle between the Star Palace disciples who were universe gods of the third heaven will be more intense. However, Senior Wushuang is extremely talented. Even if he were to be reduced to a normal disciple in the battle this time round, by waiting for another 5,000 years for the next battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace, he would definitely be able to climb up the ranks. That is true. Jian Wushuang, a voice could be heard. Jian Wushuang stopped walking and turned his head. When he saw the person walking over, he wore a smile. Long time no see, Ling Feibai, Jian Wushuang laughed happily. It is because of the fact that you keep on immersing yourself in training in the outside world. The elegant and smart youth Ling Feibai came to the front of Jian Wushuang. Ling Feibai was one of the top geniuses of the lineage of Star. During the previous battle between the geniuses of the Star Palace disciples, at the universe god of the second heavens level, Ling Feibai could be said to be unrivaled. Even Jian Wushuang had lost to Ling Feibai in that battle. After over 4,000 years, Ling Feibai had already passed the god's test for the third heaven and become a universe god of the third heaven. Just a while more and the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace that occurs once every 5,000 years will begin again. Do you have confidence this time round? Ling Feibai looked toward Jian Wushuang. The battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace? Jian Wushuang was stunned. Back then, when he had first come to the Star Palace, he had paid close attention to the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace. After all, if he were unable to keep himself within the top 5, he would be reduced to a normal disciple. In the lineage of Star, the difference in treatment between a normal disciple and a Star Palace disciple was extremely huge. However, at that moment, Jian Wushuang was no longer that interested in the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace. Looking at the time, the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace is indeed about to begin soon. Jian Wushuang chuckled and spoke again immediately, I am quite confident. How about you? I have no confidence at all. Ling Feibai shook his head and forced a smile. Jian Wushuang, ever since you made a breakthrough to the universe god of the third heaven, you have been living in the outside world. Hence, you have never fought with the disciples who are universe gods of the third heaven before. As such, there are some things that you do not know. Give me an example. Jian Wushuang spoke with interest. Then I shall tell you. Within the universe god disciples of the 3 levels of the lineage of Star, the number of disciples who are universe gods of the third heaven is the greatest, Ling Feibai said. Oh. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows and he understood quickly. All the disciples in the lineage of Star were real geniuses and a normal god's tests were unable to stop them. Hence, those disciples would usually not stay at the same level for long as they would be able to make a breakthrough. They would make a breakthrough from universe god of the first heaven to the second heaven, and then, from the second heaven to the third heaven. However, after reaching universe god of the third heaven, you're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.